6:31, so we're going to get underway. I'd like to begin by welcoming everybody to the December meeting of the El Dorado Hills Area Planning Advisory Committee. I'm the chair, John Davey. With me up front here, Bob Williams, secretary. Tim White is in South Africa right now. We'll be doing his fire board meeting from South Africa tomorrow. So Tim's not with us tonight. John Raslier, vice chair, is online with us virtually, and I don't see Brooke yet. So we're going to go ahead and get this underway. Or get everything going here. Oh, wrong one. I got three things to drive with tonight. So the first thing we do is we call our meeting to order, and these are our current officers. They're on the list. We adopt our meeting agenda if there are no objections. All right. And so the very first opportunity we have tonight is to hear from the public on anything that is not on the agenda tonight. We have a bunch of stuff that we will be discussing. If you have comments on those items, we ask you to wait until we get to them in the course of our meeting. But if you have any public comments that you'd like to comment, question, even if we don't have the answer, you can come up. There's a microphone at the podium up here. There's these microphones on the desks in front of you. You press the button, it turns green, you can talk. So are there any public comments for things that are not on our agenda that are in the room? That's easy. I'll ask if there's any public comments on our Zoom session. I'm going to turn this for a second so I can see. And I don't see any hands going up. All right. Well, we're going to move along. So we like to remind everybody as we begin our meetings how you become a voting member of APAC. Well, to begin with, if you live in El Dorado Hills, you're a member of APAC. So you didn't have to do anything. But to become a voting member, you have to volunteer to work on a project review or a subcommittee or a standing committee. And then APAC members that are here will help you learn about the process that we follow. It's conceivable that you'll have a process that might be better than ours, and we're eager to learn. So if anybody would like to work on a project, our email addresses are on our agenda, email address on our website. There's a contact form on our website as well. So if you'd like to participate, just let one of us know or send in an email. So the first item that we're going to address tonight on the agenda is we have supervisor communications. So it's an opportunity for District 1 and District 2 supervisors to talk about what's going on at the county and how it's impacting areas around El Dorado Hills and in El Dorado Hills. I don't see George online. Supervisor Turbo's not here in the room, but Supervisor John Hydall is here. John, do you have a microphone?
I do, and it's on.
And you're good.
Okay. Some of you may remember back in the 2019 timeframe, the county put in place a vegetation management ordinance, and it very much paralleled what the El Dorado Hills Fire Department was doing locally. It uses the state PRC 4291, which is a resource code that defines the requirements for defensible space. And the requirements for defensible space actually go back to the 1970s, so it wasn't anything new. That was put in place by two people primarily on the board. Our former fire chief here, Brian Veerkamp, was on the board of supervisors at the time, and so was I. And we were the ones that pushed it because we'd seen what happened up in Butte County with the Camp Fire. And we knew that El Dorado County was very similar to that set of circumstances up by Paradise and stuff where they got totally burned out, and we wanted to be better prepared. So we put together the ordinance. Now we're in the process of updating that. After Caldor did happen here, the board met again to say, what are we going to do to try to be better prepared for the next wildfire? Because it's not a question of whether it'll happen now, it's when it will happen, right? So we formed a group called the Office of Wildfire Preparedness and Resiliency, and that consists of all of our local firefighters, our fire safe councils across the county, U.S. Forestry Service, all the fire agencies for the most part in the local area got together as a group, and we have a paid staff member that leads them. And they came up with a revision to that former vegetation management ordinance that they're calling the Hazardous Vegetation Management Ordinance. So it has some significant refinements in it. It gets to the point of defining fines to a much greater extent than the first one did, because we've determined that code enforcement will ultimately be the people that have to go out. But it's an attempt to do things in a soft manner so that we encourage people to clean up the 100-foot defensible space around their properties. It went to ag. Ag was concerned because, according to the state, even a barn, a shed Anything bigger than 10 by 12 is a structure, and so you have to do defensible space around the structures. So at Tuesday's board meeting, we had a lot of discussion. We determined there were two major areas of concern. One was with the impacts on ag, and the other was the real estate industry, which is a different issue. So bottom line is we continued the item until probably April, May of next year. But in the interim, we're going to have two workshops that will be announced with at least probably 3 weeks' notice, something like that. One that focuses on the realtor industry, what their concerns are, and the general public, and then one that focuses on ag. So two separate workshops where that information will be exchanged. It'll come back to the board, and then decisions will be made. But I don't think it's going to highly impact most people in El Dorado Hills. It will impact some because if you have to take down trees, and this is a dead or dying tree type of situation. It's not you have to remove every tree within 100 feet of your house. All you really have to do is do the ladder fuel limbing up to about 10, 12 feet off the ground, and you'll be good that way. They do encourage you not to have any vegetation within 5 feet of your house that's highly combustible. But there's free inspections to be done by fire safe council members. You call a local fire safe council, they'll come out, look at your property, say, I would suggest you do this and do this. That's not required, right? But if there is a formal inspection then done by the El Dorado Fire Department, CAL FIRE, whoever, and they say, okay, we're finding that you're not in conformance, here's the things we need to have you do, that's the next level. So more to come on that, but it was a very controversial matter, as you might imagine. A lot of people felt it was government overstepping. But again, if we hadn't put the vegetation management ordinance in place, we probably would have lost more residences in Grizzly Flat as a result of the Caldor fire. Because there were people, the Fire Safe Council, who really were rigorous about their defensible space. And for the most part, their homes and structures survived. It's the other ones that didn't so much. So we saw the net benefit. But that's the topic for tonight, so I appreciate the time.
And so in the effort, we have a sort of a long list tonight, so we won't be doing a lot of questions for Supervisor Heidel, but we are going to move ahead. The next item on our agenda tonight is we have a bunch of guest speakers. So, Matt, I put your name on here first. I didn't name anybody else. But if you want to come up, grab a microphone and sort of introduce us, and then let me know which presentation I'm starting with, and I'll fire that one up. Yeah, as long as it's green and you just let go. You let go.
This is Matt Smeltzer. I'm Deputy Director of Engineering at El Dorado County DOT. I've been there 25 years and been involved in.
As long as it's green, you could just talk and not hold it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Is that working okay?
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, so anyways, been there 25 years, seen a lot of exciting projects and improvements in the county, and been involved in almost all of the various phases of this El Dorado Hills interchange, too. I was there when Blue Shield and Town Center was first being built. It's really exciting to be here for this next phase to get this last quadrant done of that interchange. And we got an excellent team. We're really fortunate to have funding lined up for these projects. Working with the county's funding and our transportation commission, our local El Dorado County Transportation Commission has lined up some money for construction, STIP funds for the construction of the interchange when we're ready for that phase. And we've got a really good team here on the project, Dustin Harrington, who's been with the county quite a while and managed several successful projects. And his consultants are here, Consor Engineering, Brent Lemon and Jason Jurgens. And then next will be John Balzer will be presenting along with John Balzer is a senior engineer with the county, again, worked on several projects in the county, very successful projects. He's teaming up with the Oak Ridge High School. Deanna Gino's here tonight from the school, came up with a great idea. John Heidel has been after us to do something about the pedestrian problems out there at the school, the crosswalk and the traffic problems. And Dan came to us with some ideas how we could partner together. And I think it's going to be a very successful project. And we're really lucky to meet together and able to get the funding for that project for our side of it. And same thing with Oak Ridge. So that's about it for me. I got the easy job. I just get to do the introduction thing. And of course, our great director is here too, Rafael Martinez. And he's got his own little talk he's going to do after us too. So I'll let the El Dorado Hills Interchange folks, the team, discuss their project. Is that?
That's perfect. And then this is where we want to be?
Yes.
Good deal. And then just tell me when to move. Yeah, as long as it's close to you and the mic, yeah, turn it around that way. And then, like I said, we have no amplification in the room, so just be rude and loud.
All right, sounds
deal.
good. So thank you, Chair and committee members. My name is Dustin Harrington, El Dorado County Department of Transportation. I'm the project manager, and we have a couple projects we want to talk about tonight, kind of introduce to the community through this forum. And the first of them, as Matt mentioned, is the final phase of improvements to the interchange right down the road here at US 50, El Dorado Hills Boulevard, and Latrobe Road. So this is a project, it's a phased project that's been going on for about 2 decades. You know, the majority of it is obviously been completed for some time, but there is that last piece there at the southeast quadrant that just never quite got around to being completed. And so that's where we are tonight. We have been able to secure some funding through the State Improvement Transportation Program, that's STIP. Fortunately, through our local transportation commission, we're very excited to be able to find these funds that were able to be earmarked for this project, because that was, you know, the reason why it was never completed was just always about money, you know, and being able to find money that we could apply to something like this. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide.
There we go.
Okay, so don't want to get ahead of myself here. Quick agenda. This is a very brief presentation. We'll just touch on the purpose and need of the project, the improvements themselves, next steps, kind of where we are with the schedule, and then we'll have a very brief question answer period at the end. Okay, so the history of the project kind of dates back really to the late 90s. The big milestone was in 2003 when the EIR was finally adopted by the county. And then from that point, then we started looking at phasing these different segments. Phase 1 was completed in 2006. That phase, I believe, was comprised of about at least 2, maybe even 3 small projects. Started with the sound walls over there near Saratoga, and then the eventual realignment of Saratoga, the improvements on El Dorado Hills Boulevard and Latrobe Road, and then, of course, the overcrossing bridge replacements. So that really was the majority of the project right there. And then phase 2A happened in 2012. I think actually 2A was the bridges that we did, and they tied in with other projects on Highway 50 HOV lanes that extended all the way up to Cameron Park. So we had just a lot of things going on. We tried to, you know, phase these projects and attach them where it made sense, you know, to try to get the, you know, best economy of scale and how we, you know, put everything out to bid. And then the last phase that was completed was 2B.1, and I know this is phase 2B, but for simplicity, but actually if you go and look through the document, we had phased that one as 2B1, and that was the westbound on and off ramps that were completed in 2015. And now this is technically phase 2B2, and we anticipate completion, I believe, in 2026. Is that what it says on there? Okay. So purpose and need, as we mentioned, this is the remaining component of a phased interchange reconstruction. The purpose is to enhance the operational efficiency, safety, capacity of the interchange, correcting existing deficiencies, accommodating future traffic demands, improving the overall traffic flow, and then providing enhanced multimodal facilities for bicyclists and pedestrians. It's kind of a very important facet of this project, just because this area is somewhat lacking those ped and bike improvements. So we wanted to make sure we address that to the best we can, what's feasible, given what our constraints are. So the improvements in this final phase consist of reconstructing and widening it's the eastbound loop off-ramp. Right now it's one lane that loops around when you're coming off the freeway and going north on El Dorado Hills Boulevard. So that would be widened to 2 lanes. The eastbound diagonal on-ramp, that would be widened from 1 lane to 3 lanes, and we would add ramp metering. Adding an additional lane to northbound El Dorado Hills Boulevard, improving bicycle pedestrian facilities, and then additional drainage, water quality treatment, retaining walls. We have, just associated improvements that just go along with what those primary improvements and goals are. So this is a plan view of the on-ramp and off-ramp there. The large building is Nugget Market, so we've got the diagonal eastbound on-ramp. You can see it would be widened from 1 to 3 lanes. We would also realign it slightly to optimize the geometry, the curvature, to accommodate those 3 lanes in acceleration and merging onto the freeway. And then also the loop off-ramp. Right now, the bridge was built for enough width for 2 lanes. We only have it striped for a single lane, but traffic forecasting, we see, a future need to have 2 lanes there, have dual off-ramp lanes, and then so we would be widening that, and then also slightly moving the geometry a little bit to the east. So we're going to put a little bit of a tangent in there. So you've got a nice curve, a short tangent straight section, and then the final curvature where both those lanes will merge right onto Latrobe Road. And then looking at Latrobe and El Dorado Hills Boulevard, this is, if you look directly straight up on the screen, that would be facing west. We'd add a 4th northbound lane as you're approaching the eastbound on-ramp. And we would retain the dual lefts that go to the westbound on-ramp that we have right now. And then we would end up with 4 through lanes. We'd have 6 lanes total after the interchange, the dual lefts, and 3 northbound, and then 1 that would be a right turn trap lane onto Saratoga Way.
And we should say that Saratoga Way you're talking about is the parking lot to Raley's.
Yeah, the first Saratoga Way, right there where the 76 station is, correct. So next steps, we obviously, we have a aggressive schedule here to try to capitalize on the funds that we have. We want to deliver this project within the next couple of years. So obviously a considerable amount of engineering studies. This is a co-op with Caltrans because it's a state facility. So we are regularly engaged with Caltrans right now on a monthly basis, if not even sooner, to flesh out some of these design issues and as well as all the other bulleted items you can see there: drainage, traffic forecasting, geotechnical, retaining walls, staging, all the things that we have to go through with the state in order to get this project where it needs to be with design. And then anytime we pick up a project that's been phased, we have the environmental document. The original document is the EIR from 2003. There have been, I believe, about 3 subsequent addendums to that EIR, 1 for each major phase. And that's essentially anything that is a minor deviation from the EIR. Maybe, we phase something differently, or maybe, we change a little bit of the project improvements. We will note that in an addendum, and so it's available for the public to review and kind of keep up as to what the current environmental document is and scope for the projects, and if there are any impacts, how they were evaluated, et cetera. So that's kind of our task there. And it really simply just involves updating our biological studies, cultural, air quality. We look at, any potential impacts that could be, that weren't realized in the original document. So most of that's just a formality to make sure that it's current. But that is something that we're currently working on. And this is our schedule. So we are, obviously to the far left, not really quite on that timeline yet, but we're approaching, we have 65% design, a big milestone in the spring. And then following that, we'd have the environmental study updates complete. And then very shortly afterwards, next fall, have 95% design. We hope to then have our right-of-way acquisition complete. We have identified a few acquisitions there just adjacent to that diagonal ramp near Town Center that we'll have to, coordinate and make sure that we have the proper land and property to be able to build these improvements. And then we've got completed design the following spring in 25, get our permits, and then hopefully be ready to advertise and award this contract, start in 25, and then complete sometime probably in late 26, in order to get everything done. And there's, it's focused on just the, this one segment, this quadrant, but, it affects a lot of other things. And we have a large number of ADT, large volume of traffic going through this. So, staging this kind of work is always a challenge, making sure that the traffic is accommodated safely through the work zones. So that's all I've got, but happy to go through any questions from the committee or any of the public.
Yeah.
So I'll turn it back to you, Chair.
Okay. And then, and I'm going to leave down the screen so in case somebody wants to jot down phone numbers or to email you, it's all right there. It'll also be posted on our YouTube channel, and the documents we use tonight will be on our website as well. So I'm going to go to the room, but first I see that John Raslier, Vice Chair, he's remote, his hands up. John, let's get to you if you go ahead, and I believe you're already unmuted, so go ahead.
All right, John, can you hear me?
Perfectly.
All right, good. I would like to ask them to go back to the slide that shows the improvement on bicycle and pedestrian crossing. You almost had it.
Seconds.
It's the side that almost. There was one that was a very close one showing the improvements.
Excellent.
Okay, good. Stay with that one. Now, I just want to point out something. I don't see how you can cross the on-ramp and the off-ramp safely if you are a bicycle rider or a pedestrian. Now, I'm a bike rider and I'm a pedestrian. I've been on this piece of property, I'm going to call it, and I think it's the most dangerous, poorly kept area that I have ever seen. And I'm looking at your map, and could you explain to me how, as a bike rider, I can get across the on-ramp, the off-ramp, and then get back on Latrobe going north?
So I'm going to turn this over to Brent Lamone with Consor. He is our technical expert, and he will do a much better job of explaining the proposed improvements we have here that I kind of just glossed over, addressing bicycle and pedestrian connections in this area.
So kind of to take a step back from a planning perspective, the county through El Dorado County CTC has an adopted countywide ATP plan, alternative transportation plan. In that plan is what is our guiding documents to develop what we're trying to do here. Within that plan, it envisions a future grade separated crossing somewhere bridging town center, going north across 50. So that's a future element of the plan that would be envisioned currently and of course implemented as funds are available. What we're trying to accomplish in this phase of the project, first is to comply with Caltrans policy within the interchange of a complete streets design policy and allow for the best approach in a phased project to allow for enhanced pedestrian and bicycle safety within the interchange. So as the ATP envisions Latrobe Road and El Dorado Hills and within the interchange, they envision it currently as a class 2 bike lane within the interchange and pedestrians as they currently are only on one side of the roadway. So on the east side of Latrobe and El Dorado Hills, the plan is still valid from that perspective of what exists today. So pedestrians are on one side only, which makes sense because pedestrian access to businesses and et cetera are off of that side of the roadway. And of course, terrain constraints limit, practical functional use of a pedestrian way on the west side of the roadway. A class 2 bike lane situation on pavement next to high-speed traffic that exists in the interchange. As part of compliance with Caltrans Complete Streets policy, we do what's called a traffic level of stress analysis. That's currently the state of practice to evaluate conditions that exist within a design that would either provide high or acceptable levels of stress for these mixed uses. And so as we're going through the environmental revalidation process, as we continue coordination with Caltrans, we're looking at options that make the best sense to implement in this phased approach. And again, given the overarching framework of the county's ATP plan, which has yet, another facility designated that is grade separated in the future. So currently, we're still in the evaluation phase with Caltrans on compliance with Complete Streets policy. But to answer the question that was raised in terms of how a pedestrian and bike would navigate the roadway, we would implement a barrier separated, potentially class 1 pathway on the same side. It'll be combined use. And in that scenario where we don't have the funds to grade separate, our second best option is then controlling those crossings with pedestrian actuated control that allows for safe passage on those at grade crossing areas. So that kind of gives you the overarching sketch of what we're trying to achieve in this phase with the limited funds that we have. And again, the ATP plan that's currently adopted envisions a grade separated facility that is located elsewhere away from the interchange.
Can I interrupt you? Thank you for your explanation, but I'm looking at your map and it doesn't seem to change at all the existing crossing for people and bikes going onto 50 or getting off 50. People, you say a pedestrian actuated system. I've seen people, I have pressed the light to cross and cars getting onto 50 just go right through the light and almost hit me, okay? The other way, people coming off, there is no light actuation there. The cars just travel. So if you happen to be crossing when these cars are coming onto Latrobe, your life is in danger, okay? So I'm looking at this and I'm saying this is not a change. This is still a definite hazard for bike riders and pedestrians. And then I think you're telling me that once I cross, I should ride on the sidewalk until I come to Saratoga Way. That's not the way bike riders go. We expect to have a lane and we expect to be not on the sidewalk. Okay, that's and then on the other side, just because you're not near stores does not mean that you should not have a bike lane that goes under 50 and that's safe. Right now, it is totally unsafe for anybody who is on a bike to travel on Latrobe going, I believe that would be, let me see, that would be going towards White Rock. You're totally in traffic and you are not safe at all. I know you're talking about it sometime in the future. Some developers have proposed that they would build a bridge somewhere going from town center going in towards maybe Raley's or whatever. But that's something that's I would consider pie in the sky. I think that your plan for pedestrian and bike is the same that exists now. It is not safe now, and it will not be safe until you find a better way to get pedestrians and bike riders across those two ramps, and also to provide a lane on the other side of El Dorado Hills Boulevard, Latrobe. And I've been talking about this for years. I have photographs here where maybe 5 years ago, we walked on this area and we sent in our concerns about this and nothing has been done. I'm surprised no one has really ever been severely injured on this. So, you know, I'm going to tell you right from the get-go, this to me is not an improvement. This is the same old, and there's no improvement here at all. And if you were a bike rider or a pedestrian that went through this area, you would realize this immediately. So thank you.
And thank you, John. And that was going to be my question about the active transportation part of this, is that right now, I know going northbound on Latrobe for pedestrians, bicyclists, mainly pedestrians right now, there is no control of the eastbound to north off-ramp. And so people queue up there. And right now, there aren't a lot of pedestrians. As we build this facility out, I anticipate probably more people will use it. But, and I don't know how you would control that other than putting a signal in there. And I don't know that that would ever be in the plan for this. So John asked my question for me. We do have another person who's got their hand up. And it looks like it's thank you for blessings. If you can go ahead and you should be able to unmute, and then I'm going to go around the room.
Hi there, yes. And I appreciate it. My email is on there, but my name is Pamela DeLong.
Hi.
And
Thanks,
I
Pamela.
have to agree. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Thank you. I have to agree with the gentleman that just spoke. I live in the lower part of Serrano. And as an El Dorado Hills community member, I want a safe way to be able to get to any part of the community that I want to without having to actually get in a car. I am an avid bike rider and I am a walker, and I have raised my children in this community, and thankfully the last one just graduated high school. But I have to say there is no safe way to get from one side of El Dorado Hills to the other. And I agree with this gentleman. It is risking your absolute life to get from town center to come back into this side of El Dorado Hills. And the only reason I know that is because there's no way I can come back from town center to come into Serrano. And not only that, but now you're adding lanes, and there's no way you can tell somebody that's coming off of that freeway and they've never come off of that exit before that you're about to come to a stop. It just doesn't happen. And we have to be very careful to cross. I feel that extending the width also of that off ramp to add lanes is not only going to take away from the very safe sidewalk that we do have today, because there is no bike path, but you are creating further risk of somebody coming off the freeway, not realizing that they're very quickly going to merge with oncoming traffic and then go under a bridge where pedestrians might actually be crossing. And if you take away the 2 lanes that are now being used for a quote unquote bike lane and that sidewalk, you're putting people's lives at risk. And I can't endorse this. And I feel like an environmental study needs to be done. And that if you actually think that there's going to be a bikeway or some sort of an overpass for pedestrians and bikes, maybe you should consider that to be built first.
Thank you, Pamela.
Brad, can you explain a little more the details of that improvements we're doing for the pedestrians, the extra width grading to the sidewalk, and the traffic controls, and the sight distance improvement on the off-ramp?
Sure. So within the currently proposed geometry, first and foremost, we're talking about barrier separating, which means putting a concrete barrier at the curb line of the sidewalk so that you have positive protection from vehicles and mixed-use pedestrian and bikes. So you would have that as a safety protection. We're also talking about at the ramp crossing of utilizing a signalized crossing for that ramp. And there's definitely safe ways to do advanced signage along that ramp in advance of that control device, knowing that that loop is 20 miles an hour design speed, and at the ramp terminal, that's the speed that folks would be operating at as they approach that signal. As they cross there, again, the barrier separation resumes, and as you go under the bridge, your barrier separated on a pathway that can be around a 10-foot clear width between the bridge abutment, which is that vertical wall that supports the bridge, and the barrier that would be at the curb line of the sidewalk. So you're talking about a 10-foot combined pathway that would navigate pedestrians and bicyclists between, town center intersection and Saratoga. And those are the things that are being evaluated. Nothing currently has been selected as a option yet.
I appreciate the feedback and the analysis, but I do think that in your plans, I think you absolutely should put some sort of warning before they start taking that off ramp. And having it 2 lanes doesn't make any sense to me. We should be doing those kind of precautions today. I appreciate adding a lane. I appreciate adding that cement barrier. I've ridden in Colfax. I know what that feels like, and it's not comfortable because cars can go over it, but I do appreciate that that would be done. But I don't appreciate that it would be two lanes wide to come off of that exit. But I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. And, the thing that I know that we discuss a lot is that, when I moved to El Dorado Hills, even in 1995, we built our house, people didn't even want sidewalks then. They wanted it to be, they envisioned this as a rural community, regardless of what was approved, project-wise in general plans with thousands of homes. And a lot of people don't have sidewalks inside their neighborhoods, and there aren't, and we didn't have a large commercial area back in 1995 or 98. And so as these things built out, this roadway is very constrained by what we've developed and what we've approved. So I know that, John Rensselaer is an avid bicyclist, and that you will probably hear more from him as the project goes forward, because John's very good about being cognizant of the bicycle and the pedestrian
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And I did buy in 1998 as well, and it was sold to me as a walking and biking community, and
Yep.
it has not really sold itself that way. But thank you.
A lot of hills. So I know that Joel's waiting for us online too, but I want to go around the room real quick and see
If I
there's
could
any-
just reiterate one more time,
Sure.
that loop off ramp is a circle, tight radius now. Kind of see it, there's a tangent that's been added to it. Kind of straighten it out before they get to that crosswalk. There's going to be some warning signs, pedestrians ahead, and the flashing beacons that the pedestrians can push to have the traffic stop for pedestrians to cross that loop off ramp. That's the intent of this design. And it's going to be like a wide enough for multi-use for bicycles and pedestrians to use. And both ramps will have devices to stop or slow down the vehicles when those go off. And improving the sight distance on the loop ramp so they can see it as they're approaching it too.
Well, as you get further along with the design phase, I think that we would, even if it's a 5-minute update, I think people would like to see it when it's appropriate. All right, in the room, are there questions? You have a microphone back there? There you go, just.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, so to answer that question, we're mandated by Caltrans design standards to support a design vehicle that's called the STAA design vehicle. So that's the large tractor truck combination. And so that's the design vehicle that sets all the geometry within each of these intersections. And so those considerations are really paramount to the initial design and validating that vehicle, that design vehicle can navigate those intersections. So there's a couple of things to remember with, traffic forecasting. So the current county model in terms of the traffic forecasting and land uses is what we utilize. We're currently in the progress of doing the traffic analysis. And typically the trucks are really defined as a % of your total traffic. And so that's how we arrive at those numbers. So land use, first and foremost, drives vehicle types. And then the model generates what those trips look like. And then we take a look mostly at peak hour operations. And then obviously there's intersection delay calculations and essentially the loading of the intersections are analyzed and reviewed and refined. Yeah. So the current land uses that are approved by the county currently are what will be reflected in the analysis.
Okay. So in the room, go ahead. Then we'll jump up front after that. Oh, it's not turning green? Nobody online's going to hear you, but is there another one floating around? There you go. Go ahead while you got it.
There we go. I have my choice. Okay, so I'm looking at the off-ramp with going to 2 lanes now. Currently, that 1 lane goes into a standalone single lane. Does that mean the new second left-hand side of the lane is going to be a merge into a second lane? How's that going to work?
Now, what's currently proposed, this diagram doesn't show it correctly, but what currently has been iterated has been 2 receiving lanes for these 2 ramp lanes.
Okay. And then did I hear you say it's going to be expanded to 6 lanes on this, on Latrobis?
No, for the northbound direction, you'll end up with dual lefts and then a 4-lane configuration, 3 through lanes and a right turn lane into Rayleigh's.
Okay, thank you. Then my next question, the next slide I think had Saratoga, or maybe not,
Who's behind that?
the other direction.
No.
I thought there was one for Saratoga showing.
Shows the Saratoga entrance to the shopping center.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so that's the westbound on-ramp.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I heard reference to Saratoga and that was a little confusing. So, all right, thank
Yeah.
you.
Saratoga originally, that Saratoga used to go straight across the highway.
Right,
And when everything was realigned with in the various phases of this project, Park Drive became essentially Saratoga and Park Drive, and yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
no
it's-
worries, thank you.
You have your microphone ready? Awesome. Yeah, turn on, and then you just let go of it.
Oh. Okay, I'm Hillary Crow, and I have noticed that when, if I'm at the signal turning to go east on the eastbound on-ramp, like you're gonna leave here tonight, like you were going up to your county office or whatever, you're going on the eastbound on-ramp, that it's not aligned with the left turn lane, so that I have seen people actually turn as a wrong-way driver onto, I don't know how to describe it. Do you understand? John
Yeah.
understands what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and they're kind of back. So I actually called in last year and got the facilities department because I was so concerned about wrong-way drivers on New Year's Eve, because I've seen it, because it goes, and I'm hoping, you've put up horses and barricades and things like that there, but nothing was done, even though I was assured that barricades would be put up there into that one little, it's a remnant of the old.
Yeah. When it was both an off and on-ramp combined.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there is a wrong way sign there, but it's sort of in the grass and past it.
It gets hit and it's gonna, there was a time when they were looking at what off-ramps are dangerous and which off-ramps tend to have, on-ramps, the wrong way drivers. I mean, that was in the news, it was big. And then after that, I noticed we had barricades up. So they must have identified that one. So can we get those barricades up again in the is this gonna fix that situation?
This will correct that entire intersection configuration. We'll have signal modifications, so all the signal heads will correctly align with the lanes that they correspond to. The dead area that's there right now that we talked about is gonna be completely gone because it will be reconstructed with an island there that's got the pedestrian refuge between the off-ramp and the on-ramp. So the good news is when the project's done, all that will be
Yeah, but I'm wondering
corrected.
about, can you do something
In
about
the
it now?
interim, yeah, we'll take a look at that. We've got our transportation staff here tonight, so this is a great
It's
comment.
not this New Year's Eve.
Right.
I see people going back up and they're embarrassed, but
Right.
on.
We'll
Something
look
like
at that.
Setting up like a K-rail or something, or something like that. Is that what you're envisioning, like a barrier?
Well, they put them up, but then people knock, they just put up horses, those little, and you can knock those over easily. And even walking, you can push it over. You know, kids are walking, we're walking to town center. You can push them over. Need something more substantial there.
So my name is Rafael Martinez. I'm the Director of Transportation for Dorado County. I just did make a note of it. I will talk to my maintenance operator and see if there's something in collaboration, because this is ultimately, this is Caltrans jurisdiction.
I know.
So we have to work with them to see if there is something that we can get them to do, because we are not allowed to operate without a permit in their jurisdiction. So we will talk to them, see if there's something that you're illustrating in terms of a hazard or some kind of confusion that we need to modify or improve. And if we can do it, we definitely will try and get it done here within the next few weeks.
Well, I was told actually by your facilities, they would take care of it. He said, I'll go down there and put them up today. So I don't know, somehow they were the ones that put them up there in the first place.
Well, and sometimes we have been known to just get a wink and a nod from Caltrans and do it ourselves. Sometimes they don't. So it all depends on Caltrans. So, but I will confirm with them, find out if that's still the something that we're okay in terms of doing. And if we are, then we will. But ultimately, this is Caltrans jurisdiction, so we have to make sure that we collaborate with them. So, but point made, I will make sure that we close the loop. All right.
But actually, I have one more, if I can add one more. Okay, so does in the 6-lane configuration, if we're going northbound on El Dorado Hills Boulevard and turning left on Saratoga Way, does that extend the left turn lane onto Saratoga Way? Not right here, but at the intersection of Park and Saratoga.
So you're talking about the left turn at Saratoga?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you,
Yeah. I know
that's
exactly
the
what you're
word,
talking
you
about.
pile up and, you know, we have 3 lights before we can.
Every time I go to soccer practice, that I'm stuck behind the last car and I seem I never get
So
to
you've
get that light.
noticed.
I know exactly. We do have a separate project that is going to be making improvements at that intersection to be increasing the capacity for that left turn pocket. So.
Yeah, so it's not included in this
No,
one.
this is
Okay.
not included as part of that. This is a separate project. But we've already made note of it. It's in our CIP and we are working on it.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Okay. You're welcome.
You have a microphone back there? All right, you ready to go?
My question, Raphael, is at southbound El Dorado Boulevard and Park Saratoga, there's a wide, at that intersection, the shoulder is very wide, and many motorists treat that shoulder as a right turn lane. So that light can be pretty long. It's often a congested intersection. And that is an illegal maneuver by those motorists. Since it's not a bike lane, it's not designated as a right turn lane. They're just using the shoulder as a right turn lane so that they can get through the red light faster. Is there any plan to, it may be as simple as restriping that intersection, but to designate that shoulder as a right turn lane?
You know, I know the intersection well, although I'm not 100% sure as to what the striping is. There are instances where it's called a de facto right turn lane is acceptable by highway engineering standards. And so then it does allow for increased capacity and reduced delays and improve level of service. So I'll have to take a look at it, have my maintenance guys, my traffic engineer specifically take a look at it and see how the striping is currently and see if we are treating it as a de facto right turn lane or not, or if it's an illegal movement. Because if it's an illegal movement, we definitely don't want to do something that is going to cause some kind of accident or some kind of confusion to our motorists and or our bicyclists and or our pedestrians. So I will definitely take a look at it.
Okay, thank you. I think there is some confusion though, because there's no designation of it as a right turn lane. So if a motorist is familiar with, traffic regulations, they have to wait in the designated right lane to make the turn when the light turns green, unless they're the first car in the queue, in which case they can make the legal right turn, but everybody behind that car has to wait.
Sure, sure. And like I said, there are instances when if there is sufficient enough shoulder and there isn't the,
This is solid stripe bicycle lane.
okay, so then if,
People are using the bicycle.
so then
lane
if that's the
for turn
case, so then if that is the case, then yes, we will take a look at it, and if we need to make modifications to it, then we will.
Well, actually, it's not even designated.
Yeah, but, yeah,
That's fine, right, that's
You have a different project manager working on that intersection? Are looking at getting that right.
yes. Yeah.
Yep. And it could get out there faster than this project. It's just a small project.
Are there any more questions in the room? We got two more online. I gotta go back and look. See. Joel, you should be able to unmute now.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Good to hear from you, Joel.
I've been looking at some of these studies over a number of years, and I've looked at maybe less than a half a dozen traffic studies going from Latrobe Road through Saratoga, and all of them seem to have decided that there would be no significant adverse effect to the traffic situation on any of these areas. That does not seem to have followed through in the real world. Are you considering the current traffic issues at Latrobe Town Center and El Dorado Hills Boulevard and Saratoga, how it affects this project? I know that the the westbound off-bound lanes tend to at times become gridlocked because of Saratoga, and with Town Center, you can see a number of YouTube videos of 5 and 6 and 7 people going through the red light, trying to get in Town Center to avoid that. So I'm wondering if you are going to be taking a look at that. Also, the new second #1 lane for off-ramp on the eastbound side, that's going to play scrambled with #4 lane going northbound on El Dorado Hills Boulevard, which should prove interesting trying to get in there. That's basically all I've got. Hi, Raphael. I know this is a tough time for you and everything, but then it's just another day. Anyway, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. Truth be told, Raphael volunteered to be here, so. Yeah. So, Jeff, you should be able to, Jeff Lewis, there you go. You should be able to go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, I've just a few questions, and this is tapped onto my past history, 40 years with Federal Highways. So as far as the project, you guys mentioned the STIP. Does that include federal funds in the past? And if this so, I would assume, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You should be okay. Go ahead.
Here, has there been federal funds used for this current project in the STIP? Does that include federal funds?
No, the STIP is state transportation funds. We have used federal funds on past phases, and this project is set up so that we can seek and pursue federal funds if needed. But currently, the funding for this project is both state and local funds.
Okay, just so you know, unless something's changed in the past 2 to 3 years, if you've used any federal funds in any phase of the project / interchange, since you mentioned this is phase 4 or 5, that all of it has been federalized. So that may be something you want to work with Caltrans to readdress.
Yes, yeah, we're aware of that, and so when we do our environmental revalidation, there's CEQA, which is the California Environmental Quality Act, and then we also have NEPA compliance, which is the National Environmental Policy Act, and so we ensure that that is in place to be eligible to use federal funds should we, want or find those funds for this phase.
Okay, good answer. Next on geometrics of the interchange section, since ideally a lot of people are used in California to the diamond interchange with cloverleafs in all 4 quadrants, and this one's got the cloverleafs in 2 of the quadrants. Are there other comparable facilities within the state that have this type of current geometrics with the proposed improved geometrics that may help address some of the bike and ped issues on going north to south, south to north?
I would say there are similar situations statewide, as well as in Sacramento County, just down the road on 50 at some of the various interchanges, Watt, Hazel, and those areas where we've got multimodal users.
Okay, do any of them have with your investigation to find that, are you aware of how they've addressed the bike issues on those particular facilities?
Yeah, there's been different approaches depending upon the funding availability. They've grade separated in some cases, and they've barrier separated along one side in other cases.
Okay. Also with the geometrics, looking for the current pit photo you have of the interchange aerial, it's showing a turnout. Is that on the north side of the interchange over by Saratoga Way? Is that for a future transit stop?
No, that's currently what's called a maintenance vehicle pull out for Caltrans to maintain and time the signal.
Okay,
the signal equipment is located on that side of the road.
Oh, okay. Well, with that in mind, keeping in never really ridden the bus system out in this area, but as I live in Four Seasons community, but as people take the bus, is there a transit stop somewhere along El Dorado Boulevard there that people will be able to catch a bus to help feed those business centers and stuff that will hopefully not mess the traffic flow up much?
Not really familiar with the transit routes in this area.
Yeah, they try real hard.
Yeah.
In fact, Eldorado Transit, I think the route that was on the boulevard doesn't exist anymore. We had the commuter transit station there in town center, and they had talked about another location, I believe, either on the west side of town center, but they had also talked about up along Silver Valley at 1.2. And there's, of course, the new park and ride at Bass Lake Road. But yeah, in this area, I don't know that there's a current route.
Okay. Well, yeah, just try and keep that in mind. If we're trying to help address the pedestrians, the safe movement of pedestrians and bicyclists, we also need to keep in mind for the people that may want to be using the buses, they're on and off locations to access for that bus ride. Yeah. So another thing to look at. Okay, a little bit more of a higher scope. I know with the current or the latest CIP for the particular El Dorado Hills area, that 50 is proposed to be widening, and that would bring in Empire Ranch Interchange to the west, and eventually Ox Lanes heading east-west, west-east for all the way from down to East Bidwell up to Cameron Park. So do those type of improvements, will that have any significant changes in features that may affect your particular upgrade with your proposed improvement?
Yeah, good point that you bring up there. So the improvements at Empire Ranch are modeled in the horizon traffic year, our 20-year design horizon. So those future improvements that you mentioned are adequately modeled in our traffic operational analysis, which we'll have here in about a month.
Okay, then I've got, let's see, one last question before the current El Dorado Boulevard heading south and vice versa heading north. Are the signals planned to be interconnected to help with the flow of traffic to help minimize queuing and or give say the first half of the queue a little bit of preference to help get through the signals? Because I know a gridlock, AM and PM, that whole area gets packed pretty bad.
Currently, the signals are coordinated from the Saratoga, the first Saratoga there, the 76, all the way down to White Rock Road, I believe. So that coordination is currently in place. As part of these improvements, when the intersection is reconfigured and reconstructed there at the ramps, that timing will be reevaluated and looked at as part of that coordination to help and make sure that traffic is optimized and at the various intersections.
So with your current coordination with Caltrans for the Highway 50 traffic and the El Dorado Hills Boulevard, would you say they've been lenient with your guys' need to get additional green time on the main route, or they're trying to protect the freeway more?
Well, what I can say is Caltrans certainly looks at avoiding congestion and backup and queuing on the ramps, I think is their primary focus. And so we try to, strike a good balance. So, the local roads are also functioning optimally, but unfortunately Caltrans controls those signals. And so, we do our best to relay concerns that we may have if there's a way to optimize that timing. Our signal technician for the county is very close with their signal techs, and so they do coordinate regularly, looking at timing and operational issues. And so that's not to say nothing could be improved here, but that is an ongoing issue that we do continually evaluate.
Okay, then here'd be my last question. With a little bit outside your bounds of your current picture that's on the screen, I guess, but heading northbound on El Dorado Boulevards, tying into westbound Saratoga Way, which is right there by the Walgreens, especially at PM peak hour, the left turn lane gets backed all the way past through the current ramp on area. Is there anything that you guys have possibly looked at to try to help reduce that or improve it?
Yes, we do have a capital improvements project that will widen that intersection. It's not only going to improve that left turn pocket, but it's also going to, I believe, widen the southbound lanes as well. So that's a separate project, separate from this one.
Sure.
And maybe at some point we can come in and talk to the group about that project as a separate topic.
Right. I just don't want to hear we do all these improvements and we're still end up with gridlock right at the Saratoga. Yeah.
Nope.
So we can make sure it's more of a efficient, transparent, fluid movement. That's
Agreed.
good for me. Thanks. Nice answers. Good answers.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate that last person's input. This is great feedback for our community.
Thank you, Pamela. So we're going to get moving along because we have one more project from DOT to talk about. John, your hand is up. Is there anything that we need to address?
Yeah, I just want to mention that for years now, it's never really been explained to people that Caltrans controls the signaling as you approach at the bridge there and as you come out of that bridge, and also the pedestrian and bike crossings that cross the property that belongs to Caltrans, our DOT has no authority over that particular property. So what you're actually doing is you have to explain that to people, that what you're talking about now really hinges upon the fact if Caltrans will agree on the signalization, if Caltrans will agree on making the crossings on the eastbound and the westbound entrances safe for people and bicycles, it all depends upon Caltrans. And I've been hearing year after year after year, hey, John, we can't do anything because Caltrans will not agree to it. Well, you have to let people know, okay, that the improvements that you're talking about may or may not happen if Caltrans does not go along with it. And thank you, Raphael, for coming, and we do need your input on this. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Okay, so we're going to move ahead. Thank you, guys. We appreciate that. Do you want to introduce the next project and just let me know
absolutely.
What slides we're going to go with?
Good evening. My name is John Balzer, also with El Dorado County Department of Transportation. We'll talk a little bit about Harvard Claremont, so if you could pull that up.
You want the, let's see, number
One.
6 or?
No, the other one.
The other one, okay.
Yeah. And
Let me grab that for you. Sorry about that.
no problem.
And,
Thank you. And while you're pulling that up, I'll mention something, and I'll probably repeat it a few times just so that it's not too confusing, but this is a partnered effort. So this Oak Ridge Circulation Harvard Claremont intersection is really a project that school district, as Matt had alluded to, reached out and mentioned, and I'll go through it a bit more as we go through the slides, but basically mentioned that there's a condition out here that can be improved upon. And to improve upon it, we've really got to work together because there's an on-site circulation or an on-campus piece that's being affected, and we're affecting one another with the roads. And so that really laid the groundwork for this project that we're going to go through. So what I'll go through, I'll be touching on, and you'll see plenty of stuff dealing with Oak Ridge campus. Dan Agino is here as well, and Dan will go through a few other components. But I'm going to be focusing primarily on the roads themselves. So with the county DOT infrastructure being Harvard Way, Claremont Way, and then you're going to see some improvements that will also touch Silva Valley. But essentially, we're focusing more on the intersection. I'll touch a little bit on it, and then Dan will go through a bit more. So by all means, as I talk, if you do have questions, I'm happy to answer at the end, but it may make sense to hold some of those until Dan goes through some of his so that there's a little bit more of a full picture. So next slide. Similar to how Dustin went through, we're going to go through a little bit of purpose and need, a little bit of an overview, a schedule. I'll mention now and at the end, this has got a website. So like a lot of our DOT projects, if you go into County of El Dorado, you'll see the website at the end. All the information that we're going through here is maintained on that website. And then we do keep that updated. So if there's questions later on at where things are at, that's a good resource to use. So jumping into the purpose and need, and I think everybody here knows where Oak Ridge, of course, is, and Harvard and Claremont, where those streets are. As I mentioned at the onset, purpose and need, really this is about safety. This is also about performance. And when we speak safety, it's not just for the students, it's also for the public that travels through there. And we looked at opportunities to improve that performance through some of these partnered efforts that we're going to go through. What you'll see here on these exhibits, the grayed out, this is a simple attempt to try to kind of show these two projects. Dan will also go through a bit more detail, but the grayed out areas of the slides, that's really the on-campus improvements that Dan will touch on. Those areas that you can see in color, that's a lot more of what the DOT project, if you will, that we're going to get into. So next slide. And I'll go through this a little bit quick, but by all means, if there's questions, we can circle back around. So what you're seeing here, Silva Valley, of course, Dan will get into, there's some churn pockets. There's another access point. In a nutshell, and I'll repeat this a few times, but the effort here was to consolidate those access points on Harvard Way and then funnel that traffic into Harvard and Claremont's intersection and signalize the intersection. That was the idea here. And by signalizing it, open up an opportunity to get the timing of the signal to really coincide with those peak hours. And the idea being that in general, for folks that travel through there, it's not always a problem of congestion and traffic, but it very much differs depending on when you do because of school hours and because of access. And given the abundant amount of access points along Harvard Way, with vehicles dropping kids off, vehicles going to parks, students trying to park in the rear parking lot, you have a lot of cross-traffic movement. You also have a lot of students that are crossing the road or walking along the sidewalk. So this can be an opportunity to consolidate those points, give them designated safety zones, and then also try to really think through opportunities to make not only safer, but to be able to clear the queues out. And so what Dan will touch on is a lot of the on-campus stuff you see that connects the rear student parking lot through these other access points. And then, of course, all this is funneled into Harvard Claremont. Next slide. Thank you. So this is the intersection. What you'll notice here, and I'll show it again in another slide, is we tried to work with the roadway's width as it is right now, because there is space through the center median to allow for, through restriping, turn pockets. The other thing this shows is basically expansion of a turn pocket on the school side for folks coming up from El Dorado Hills Boulevard. And the idea there was to work with the space that's already out there to minimize some impacts, but then also provide a little bit more storage for folks trying to get into the school. And then this would be the location where those signal arms would be located to signalize this intersection. Next slide. This is another view of it. You can kind of see what I was talking about a little bit more. So those are the churn pockets into the school, both for folks coming up from El Dorado Hills Boulevard, also the churn pocket that's got a decent amount of storage on Harvard for folks making a left turn into this signalized intersection. And then all of this is connected all the way back through to the rear parking lot. And like Dan will touch on, there's also another access point and churn pockets on Silva Valley. Next slide. So this kind of shows a little bit of what that restriping also means. And Dan will touch on this, but there will be some effects associated with these improvements because we're using the width of the existing road without causing those improvements to chase them into more impacts to the neighboring facilities. There will be some losses to on-street parking. I've highlighted a little bit in the red bubbles. And one of the things that I'll let Dan speak to it a bit more, but that's one of the drivers too, was trying to find solutions for more parking on site or on campus. But did want to just point out here that some of that on-street parking, which is happening right now within shoulder areas, would go away here, particularly to accommodate the areas of the turn pocket. The same thing you're going to find too, as Dan talks through, is happening through some of the turn pockets on Silva Valley. But those, again, are in efforts to open up that roadway. And then that parking is one of the drivers I know the school was looking at with some of their solutions. Next slide. So I've gone through a lot of the overview of that project a bit fast, but this is the schedule. I know Matt had mentioned at the beginning, this project is funded. This project is under a very tight time frame to really bring the solution to the community. And so this is really about trying to make it a reality in the next year and a half, 2 years. So these schedules that you see up here and what we're driving for, and I know the school can provide also kind of from their perspective that same message that the goals that are being sought out is really to make this project become a reality beginning this next year and have it done this next year. And to make that happen, there's a whole bunch of partnering efforts between the school, between DOT, and then also looking at schedules, recognizing that with students and parents, nobody wants to interrupt that more than it needs to be. And so a lot of the discussions that have been happening, quite frankly, in the background are around staging opportunities to coincide, looking at the summer schedules and the summer breaks. And then if there is going to be a period that needs to come back, looking at coming back in the winter period and then having that staging so that it's not too much of an inconvenience for the students. So kind of where we're at right now in the background, we're working through those components of design, working through those clearances on the utilities and CEQA, and then a lot of coordination efforts between school and DOT just to make sure that we're both coordinating and dancing through that process well, because there's a lot of parts that these two projects obviously marry together to become one. So I know I went through that super quick. I'm sure Dan can fill in some of the blanks on the school side, but I guess next slide. Thank you very much. This is the website that I mentioned at the beginning. I don't know if folks in here are familiar with how DOT does stuff. It's not always the easiest to find, but if you do go into the county's webpage, and just as a footnote, this applies to virtually all the projects that you're going to hear about. So they have their own website. This is just a snapshot of what it looks like, the schedule, the presentations. It's a wonderful resource. There's contact info, there's phone numbers and emails. And so that's what this is here. I don't know, Chair, if there's any questions that are needed now or if you want to hold them until after Dan.
You want to let, Dan, you want to, which one am I using for you now? I'm trying to, number 6? Okay. We're almost there. Okay, sorry about that. I'm moving slow tonight. Sorry. I'm almost there, gang.
That's okay.
That would be it. Okay.
Well, let me just start off by introducing myself. My name is Dan Augino. I'm the Director of Maintenance, Operations, and Facilities for El Dorado Union High School District. Encompasses five high schools within the county. This is the facilities part of my responsibilities. We started looking at this about a year ago and asked the county to give me a hand, and because I do school facilities, not necessarily traffic. So we partnered up in this endeavor, and we're moving forward with it. The school district has realized that we've had an issue at Oak Ridge with parking and the amount of cars that we have, and it fluctuates during the year, but for the most part, it's always a problem. We started off this process by just standing back and watching it in the morning and the afternoon, and watching traffic flows and watching students and how they cross the streets. And with no signalization there, it's just one of the biggest problems we noticed was just people going across the street one at a time. And by that time, the traffic's backed up all the way to Silva Valley. So I'm sure you community members probably know that. So we wanted to work on this as much as the county did. What I'm showing you here right now is just in that picture, just an overview of the campus. Can I go to the next slide, please? And I'm going to start off with the bus drop-off area. One of the things what we're going to do, is we're going to be moving the bus drop-off area to this location right here. This is the west parking lot. There's an entrance here and an exit at this point. And this grass area has enough room for us to actually move the parking a little bit and actually provide bus drop-off area. Next slide, please. This is what it would look like when it's finished, and allow us to move the bus where the bus parking or the bus drop-off area is now, allow us to move it to this area. Where it is currently now, if we go to the next slide, I'm sorry. This is what it looked like from ground level. You can see that area right there between the parking. We actually moved some water valves and backflow preventers to allow for this a year and a half ago, hoping that we could do something in the future. Next slide. Right here, if you'll notice, is 2 parking lots. This parking lot in front of the administration is an admin parking lot, but this entire area here was kind of a wasted space because it was basically designed for when we had 5 or 6 buses that were dropping kids off in the morning. We don't do that anymore. Right now, we only have 2 buses. So we're able to move that to a different location. Next slide, please. As you can see, this is the current bus drop-off area, and it's pretty much left wide open. There's a few parking spaces here, but really not much. So our idea was, let's better utilize the space that we have. We have some grass area here close to the buildings that we can actually encroach on and allow for a few ideas. We came up with several ideas. We presented 3 different options to our school board and to the people at the site, and the one that was the most popular was a 3-lane drop-off area, 2 for dropping off kids and 1 as a pass-through to park in the main parking lot. Next slide, please. So this is pretty much the same photo that John had showed you. But as you can see, if we have a right-hand turn pocket into this area, we can actually go into these 3 lanes here. And the center one would be a pass-through lane that allows you to go right into the parking lot. And as I'll talk about later, we plan on putting another exit from this parking lot through the edge of the stadium onto Silva Valley Parkway. So this also allows for a roundabout. So if you drop your kids off, you can hit the roundabout, you can go back out this way, hit the street light, you can go in any direction that you want. But you also have the option of going through the parking lot and exiting out on Silva Valley. You still maintain an exit from the parking lot to make a right-hand turn in this area. But as you can see, this is just a different rendition, it looks like we'll have a much better flow. I think we redesigned, we're looking at a couple different things about maybe moving this out and having less grass area here. I do have to move this portable, which I've already started to work on. And then we are talking about actually adding 2 exit turn lanes here, 2 right-hand turn lanes. Wouldn't be a left hand, but 2 right hands. Next slide. So with that, as well as when we talk more about the exit from the parking lot and the stadium onto Silva Valley, there would have to be a right-hand turn pocket. The county's provisions are, is it 365 feet?
It's usually, yeah, I think it's usually 10 times speed limit.
Okay.
So it could be 450, it could
Okay.
be a little bit less.
I know that we have to have, I'm sorry, I hit you with the beam. But this area right here, we'll have to remove a lot of this grass, adjust the sidewalk. I've already been in contact with CSD in Serrano about encroaching on their area and their grass area and modifying their sprinkler system so that we can get this done as soon as possible. I feel like, the school district is ready to move on this. We're planning on it. This area here, the one obstacle that we have here, and I've been working with PG&E, and I must say, I know they've got a few black eyes over the past few years, but they've been fantastic to work with, very responsive, because we want to be really aggressive with this. But those power lines that are there some of them are hanging really low. So we've had an application in for just about a year now, and they're working on hiring a subcontractor to actually replace a couple of those poles and make them taller so that we can provide our access. We have to have 18 feet of clearance above that road. So we are already in that process. With that, this is a preliminary drawing, but we might have just a little bit more of a right-hand turn pocket, not entering onto Silva Valley going southbound. So we'll be working on that as well. But right now, we have structural engineers working on a retaining wall for that exit, because that is a pretty steep hill, and we'll have to have a retaining wall there. There will not be a sidewalk. We can't make ADA compliance for the state of California. The school district works with the state of California, the Department of the State Architect, for all our construction, and it's not a local or county. So we don't really work that much together as let's say a county inspector. We have to hire our own DSA inspector. But when it comes to the traffic flow and things on the street, we're working side by side in that area. And this is just another look, and there's kind of 2 pictures. I want to blow it up as big as I could for the slides that I had, but that's what it would look like when it's complete. And one of the things, excuse me, one of the things we're hoping to do is, years ago, we actually had to block off the parking lot. Because before we put the solar panels in, we had our teenagers that loved to come and do donuts in the parking lot and would wake up all the neighbors. So we put a gate there. Since then, we put speed bumps, which didn't help much. But then when we put the solar in, I think we solved that problem. So the goal is to block off the stadium with a gate here and leave this open to the public once again to be able to park there and use the facilities, the stadium. We have a lot of people that come in and run the track and run up and down the bleachers. We have, of course, a lot of sports outside of high school sports. junior Trojans and, you know, other baseball teams and stuff like that. I think that's pretty much it. There's just a few slides there to kind of give you a general idea.
And one thing I'd like to kind of add to it, it's not only a major partnering effort, especially when you look at like Dan alluded to. Utilities, I think everybody here knows, but PG&E to get their schedule to coincide with our schedule, telephone, Comcast, there's just a lot of components to be able to coordinate through. So we've been working through that. These are the goals of that schedule to really bring this thing to life. But there's a lot of moving parts and pieces that may impact that. Thus far, there's been a lot of effort and a lot of people shoveling to make this a reality. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, and that's always a challenge with other, you know, that for Bass Lake Road with the Country Club realignment, the big delay was AT&T. The vault that they were waiting for equipment to put in the vault, and the timing on that was not optimum. So, yeah, fingers crossed that they recognize that, you know, if they can meet your schedule and you can work around it.
Well, they have been really good to work with. We've already moved our gas meter for the school. That was applied for 6 months ago, and that's already completed. They did it at night, so it didn't affect the school. We have a Comcast box in the right-hand turn pocket going into the parking lot. I'm working with them, just figured out it wasn't AT&T, it was Comcast, because they don't have any signage on there. And then we have two issues. We have a vault that's in that PG&E vault, which is main power to the school, that has to be moved, as well as the telephone pole. So we've been working hard the last year in getting those pieces, making sure they happen first, so that we can do our construction schedule.
Well, now, I guess we could probably open it up in terms of, yeah.
We still have another DOT related
Yeah.
conversation to have, and that's the, not that the dimension will be dispersed, but I think it's perfect planning you guys are doing, that's exciting stuff, but maybe we can incorporate all the DOT related questions into one.
That's right, as long as you guys want to keep you all night. But if you're okay with that, I know that Raphael's going to hear what we're going to talk about here for the.
Sure.
You okay with that in terms of timing?
Well, I guess my only concern is I'd like to have Dan and John leave because that is a different topic. So I mean, hopefully there's not too many questions. They're here, they can answer them, and then we can go.
Let's remind everybody, we'll be real quick.
Yeah.
And keep the questions pretty short. Let's start in the room. Lindy, do you have your microphone back there?
Yes, I have one. So my question is, if you are removing a lot of the on-street parking on Harvard, what's the analysis of the impact with Rolling Hills drop-off and pickup?
Well, in what we have observed, there's only a few cars that park on the north side of Harvard. It's actually, the way it's lined right now, doesn't seem to be that much parking, because as it goes towards Claremont, it actually moves towards the sidewalk.
Right. So you're just removing the north side? You're just removing the north side on-site or street parking?
Yes.
Okay,
There's nothing on the south side at all.
okay, that's all gone.
It's just a fog line and a space there that is really not, it's not a bike path, it's really nothing. And we do have the sidewalk there. We plan on maintaining the sidewalk where it's at. And we'll have to do some grading there, and our goal is to put a sitting wall for the students. If you've ever driven by Ponderosa, we did that because we were working with the county on a sidewalk that goes from Ponderosa to Highway 50. And that's we're going to do something similar to that. Concrete wall, inlaid Oak Ridge High School logo, and then a place for kids to sit.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else in the room? Okay, then I'm going to go, Mr. Resler, if you're ready. We're going to keep it short, though. So
Yes, very short. A question that I want to ask DOT, are you going to be removing bike and pedestrian paths on both sides of Harvard? That's my first question.
As Dan mentioned, we're trying to maintain the sidewalk that's already there. We are going to be doing some improvements to the crossings. around that signalized intersection, so there will be a little bit of improvements there. In terms of the bicycle, there isn't much designated bicycle routes or anything like that on Harvard. So we're trying to keep virtually what's there, but there will be, as I mentioned earlier, a restriping. So there will be a slight reconfiguration of those lanes. But by and large, we're trying to work with existing.
I'm sorry, to me, that's a very poor answer. You have to provide bike and pedestrian access on both sides of that road. My second question is, if you're going to move cars parked on Harvard onto Silver Valley, do you realize that students park from Harvard maybe 2 to 3 miles down Silver Valley along the sidewalk? They block bike and pedestrian. People on bikes have to go into Silver Valley, into traffic to avoid all of these cars that are parked. If you're going to move more cars, that's going to make things even more congested and more dangerous. I want you to keep that into consideration. And for the school itself, I don't understand why you don't go back to having more buses. Don't you think that would be a better way of having students where you won't have all of this traffic parked all along Silver Valley and probably Harvard? And
That sounds like a great idea, but we can't force people to take the bus. If we
well,
had ridership that wanted to use the bus, we'd provide more buses.
all right, there are things that you can do to make it more palatable for people to use the bus rather than take their car. You have to, we're not talking about forcing people. We're trying to say you have to think of ways that make it better for people to take the to take the bus rather than the car. And that's what I'm saying. And the fact that you don't have bicycle and pedestrian paths on Harvard in this plan is not acceptable. And the fact that bicycles will now have to go into Silver Valley into traffic because of all of the cars that are parked along the side of the road is also a very dangerous situation. I'll end my comments there. I know you guys want to get through this evening, and that's it. Thank you.
Here, can I respond to
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Get Mike, you can hear you.
Just one item of clarity on that, though, John. There's existing sidewalks and there are bike lanes down Silva. We're not proposing to change what's out there. So I do want to say we aren't taking that away from those people. We're trying to maintain what's already out there and add this other function to what exists.
Can I just talk briefly? Bicycle riders do not ride on the sidewalk.
There's class twos that.
So let's clear that up right now. Okay, thank you.
I would tend to disagree with you because
No.
Let me
I've
finish.
ridden a bicycle more years than you're alive. We do
Thank you
not
very much
ride on the sidewalk.
Thank you for pointing that out. But I'd like to tell you that there's a junior high school and a grammar school right next door, and they do ride their scooters and their small bicycles on the sidewalk. And if I was a parent, I would probably prefer them riding on a sidewalk than in the street with traffic. You're an experienced bike rider, I'm sure, and I know you know the traffic laws, but children don't.
Well, they should be taught the laws, and I've also have watched children on scooters and things dart out off of the sidewalk into the roadway and cross, which makes things very, very hazardous on Silver Valley. But okay, I'm sorry. That's it. No more.
Thank you.
All right. Take your word for it, John. Jeff, if you want to go ahead quickly, we have just a couple more, and then we gotta get moving.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, quick question for the Oak Ridge High School with the bus parking. You guys showed the roundabout. You guys both had nice presentations. Anyway, on the roundabout, have you checked to make sure the roundabout can handle the wheel-based turning associated with the type of vehicles you propose for that use? Because just so you know, in the past, I've seen roundabouts put in some cases, $1 to $2 million projects. Grand opening day, the trucks and that, or whatever gets out there and they can't use it because they roll over the roundabout with their rear tires inside and outside. So just a caution there, make sure you put your wheelbase turning radius templates on your plans to get them through that particular area.
That's a great question, and we did discuss that. And our first design was a smaller roundabout, but we made the decision to remove portable P14 that's sitting there right now to provide a big enough roundabout. Because the worst thing, you're right, the worst thing we could do is have a delivery truck or a bus from a neighboring school district for an athletic event be stuck in that roundabout and can't get around. So we did, we used it, we discussed it, and we used the widest roundabout that we could put in there. And again, we moved, and it wasn't inexpensive to move that portable.
Sure.
So thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yes.
Okay, Jay Diaz, you should be able to unmute.
Hi, my name is Jenny Diaz. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks, Jenny.
Okay, hi. First of all, I just want to do a quick thank you. I'm a longtime resident as well. All of my kids have gone to Oak Ridge High School. My husband teaches there. And personally, all 5 of us in our family have almost been hit multiple times crossing that intersection. So this is long overdue. And I would like to thank everyone there for all of their hard work in finally addressing this issue. So thank you for that. My question comes to, I'm also a resident of Stonegate. I've lived here for 18 years. And our neighborhood community is wondering, has there been a neighborhood analysis? We've heard lots about parents and students and athletic events coming, but has there been a neighborhood analysis to determine the impacts to the residents of Stonegate specifically?
I don't believe that we've done a direct analysis. I can look into if there's been anything done to Stonegate specifically.
I would like that specifically. I mean, I know, and I appreciate you went out and watched and looked at that section by Harvard and Claremont. Right on Claremont, right there too. If you watch any pickup and drop off, it says there's no stopping signs posted. We have parents and students parking on both sides. So it actually makes it one lane for kids to walk through and cars to pass, because you currently have, and it's been this way for years, that's just how it is, but you have parents and students both parking during all of those drop-off times. So it actually makes a very unsafe situation for kids to walk either to or from school, as well as cars to pass through. So with this continued, with adding the stoplight, I'm wondering, how is that going to impact that? Also, is Stonegate going to be then considered instead of me going down Harvard and, and tucking in into the passway, are we going to try to go through the back way of Stonegate? Also looking at just the stoplights, the actual brightness, are there going to be additional lights installed? The brightness impact on the neighborhood, really more though of the safety, and particularly, like I said, the Claremont and the dismissal times. So the neighborhood impact, I'm really concerned.
Let me clarify one thing though. While I don't think there's been a direct Stonegate analysis, I would say that like any of our other signal projects, we do go through traffic studies to look and see what level of service and what kind of performance to expect there. So obviously there is a component of consideration that would play into your questions associated with that. And then in terms of lighting, we are looking at doing some hoods or shields to try to confine that lighting as best we can. But, thank you for your question. Certainly we will look at some of those considerations.
From the district standpoint, we do plan on putting some lights along the sidewalk area between the new construction and the street. I know years ago, I was at a football game and I almost hit a student because there was no lights coming out of the parking lot. And we added another light there. But our goal is to put lights similar to what we have underneath the solar canopies, which are timed when they come on for 5 minutes. And then if there's no movement, they dim to 20%. And then if there's no movement after that, they go off. So we're hoping to match that type of lighting for the sidewalk in front of the school. So we don't have neighbors that are looking at street lights that are on
Thank
all
you.
night long.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Additionally, right now, that stop sign, it does force everyone to stop at that, right at Harvard and where the office is. By putting that as a green traffic light, if you're coming off the boulevard, going to Harvard, like to Rolling Hills Middle School, we're also just wondering if that's going on a green, the impact of speeding. We still hear, of course, the donuts and the street racing and things like that, but it's no longer like a forced stop. So a little bit of concern that now it's just going to be a green light when school's not in session, or in the evening, just a green light kind of race pathway. Yeah. So is there any kind of talk on how to kind of monitor that?
There's some traffic calming stuff that we can look at, and certainly just because there's so much pedestrian activity already, and those streetlights aren't very far apart.
Right.
There are some design components that should deter some of that speeding from occurring, but that's certainly something we can look at, and part of it's going to also boil down to the timing on the signal. So,
And thank you. My last part probably is just looking at your diagram, because I've been here 18 years. That bigger turn pocket from coming up the boulevard to Harvard, going to like the Oak Ridge office. So you're kind of past that band parking lot going to the office. That turn pocket, I just doesn't necessarily look big enough. That right where you turn into the office seems like right where you turn over to right, that's going to get backed up really quick, because that turn pocket is not too long, and then it just turns in where you would like all the parents and students to come in. So maybe taking a look at that. Other than that, I thank you for your time, and just would consider you to take the neighborhood into account as well. Thank you, everyone, for your work. It definitely is long overdue, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, no more questions. So thank you guys for being here to walk us through this. And of course, anybody who comes here and present the project, we always remind them, you have an opportunity to come back. Anything you need to update, if you have questions, you want to engage with something, even if it's virtual, we're ready to hear it. So thank you both for that. And so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move along. I have to share my screen, sorry. There we go. Okay, so we have two standing committee reports that we want to do, and these are the first two that we've engaged in. We announced it back at the beginning of the year, and we have a lot of volunteers that have put in a lot of time on it, and some of those volunteers are sitting up here with me right now. So if we want to go ahead and start with the Transportation Standing Committee report, you tell me when you want me to move. Do you have the? You're okay with? Okay.
Seeing you in person.
And so, yeah, and Raphael's been engaged with our Transportation Standing Committee members, and they've had some ongoing dialogue. So, Raphael, thank you for coming tonight to support sort of where we're starting.
Yes.
Let me know when you're ready, and I'll move.
So, yeah, go ahead. So, on behalf of the Traffic Standing Committee, thank you for the opportunity to present. This is version 5 of the presentation in the last 6 weeks, because things have moved along. One of the things that we really wanted to focus on is improving engagement with DOT. I think problem addressed. They outnumber us today, so that's good. But I've been working, recently engaged with Raphael to work more collaboratively on this presentation. That's why it's been through 4 revisions in the last 6 weeks. So I'm going to go through it really fast, just kind of laying out what our perception is of the current situation. And then Raphael's going to talk about current state and some ideas that we talked about for some of the things we're going to address today. So next. So the problem statement that we started with hasn't fundamentally changed, in that there's a lot of development that's being proposed now, especially south of 50 and including Costco on the north side, that is being looked at discreetly from a traffic analysis standpoint. This seems problematic, dramatically problematic to us, because the amalgamation of all those things is really where we're going to run into trouble, we believe. In conversation with Raphael, he educated me on the current process, which he'll talk about sooner or in a moment. But I think there's still room for improvement there, and both in terms of the process, what we do, and certainly in communication. I think the communication problem, I think we're definitely on the right path. A further problem is APAC doesn't have a consistent process for interacting with the county in general, not just traffic, but planning and the board of supervisors too. So that's something that we would like to address jointly as well. Let's just skip this one. I've talked through this already in the interest of time. So I mentioned that there's a lot of stuff going on. This is a subset of all the development that's being proposed now. Not all of it's approved. Some of it's in process. Some of it is already underway and moving dirt. The first one, the Gateway project, started grading, I think, this week. And that's a particular, it's tactically urgent to us because that's an impacted intersection at Latrobe, Golden Foothill, Robert Matthews already. So when we talk about the Gateway project, the expanded Gateway project, as well as the PAC West parcel split, that could have a serious impact on that whole area. That's one example of where looking at things discreetly doesn't tell the whole picture. And when you overlay the school pickup and drop off traffic in that area as well, it really is going to be profound. So what I was hoping to do is I was hoping to come up with a map or a way to explain this or represent this or communicate this. Yes. So I tried getting county maps, the plat maps. John connected me with a pilot project that the EDH Fire did that they used to communicate the impacts for fire. Each of these are development projects, and what this Aegis GIS tool allows you to do is click on a project and drill down into the project metrics. So it was ideal for what I think that we need to look at as a community, but this was a pilot project, and I guess it didn't really go anywhere. I just use this for illustrative purposes. I know that Raphael's going to talk about the model that they use, so maybe that's a tool. But again, just from illustrative standpoint, I think this is really important. From a communication standpoint. And when it comes to traffic, I think a lot of what I hear from people is, they're not concerned about growth and development. People know that that's going to happen. What they're concerned about is the impact on themselves, which is environmental and traffic. So George and I are working together on making sure that we have a common story there. But I think the better job that we do, both from an APAC standpoint, from a county standpoint, in explaining to people the impact of the development, the friction will go down dramatically and make everyone's lives a lot easier. So I guess what I'm proposing is that we use some sort of tool, the ArcGIS-like tool or the county model or something like that, to facilitate the communication with the community. That we use metrics that are easily understandable. And we talked about some of those today, about the type of development in the area, driving traffic, and the characterization of the traffic. I think being able to communicate that cleanly and easily will be very beneficial for the community. And I'd really like to figure out how we can have an ongoing process. Having communication like this is fantastic, but having it more built into the process of how we all do our work would, I think, fundamentally improve the situation. So now I'd just like to turn it over to Raphael to help educate us and help with that communication process.
Okay.
And I want to thank you again for your time and your engagement.
Sure. No, not a problem. Well, thank you all very much for having me here. Once again, my name is Rafael Martinez, Director of Transportation for Dorado County. And I've been here several times over the course of the 7 years that I've been Director of Transportation, either for various projects, entitlements, whether they're CIP and or development based. And so the Department of Transportation, our main concern is that we are providing proper infrastructure to meet the demands of our community. And so when Bill contacted me, he had a lot of questions as to what were the metrics in terms of how we measure that. And over the years, John has asked me that question as well. And I've had it very specific to particular projects that we had that were either going up for approval, either to planning commission or to the board of supervisors. So when Bill contacted me, he said, hey, you know what? I just want a general overview as to what you guys do in general, not just for a particular project. And I thought, you know what, this would be a great opportunity. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to put together a PowerPoint presentation to show you that. So I thought I'd just go ahead and explain it to you. And if at some given point you would like to see that, I probably could create it. But with projects that are going to be coming online here, either for approval through planning commission or the board, I'm more than welcome to always come in and go over the data and or the specifics of any particular project. But in general, first and foremost, I want to dispel some of the myths. The county is not responsible for dictating what a parcel is going to be utilized for or who is going to be utilizing it. So many times my wife would tell me, why don't you put a Starbucks over here? Or why don't you put a Trader Joe's over there? And I keep on telling her, that's not my job. I don't tell these companies where to go or what to implement at what locations. These are all property owners, whether they're companies and or they're individuals that have properties that then decide that they want to develop them. It's our job as the county to determine whether they are abiding by our standards and our regulations, that we then give them permission to say, yes, you can. And so such as Supervisor Heidel said earlier, our job is to make sure that we are just checking what they are doing, but we don't want to overstep government's bounds and or our reach and tell people what to do. We just want to make sure that it is by a certain metrics or a certain standard that everybody can live with and that everybody has to play by the same rules. And so any property owner can decide that they want to either abide by what the zoning is, and this is more of a planning aspect, but if the zoning is for residential and they bought a single family residential piece of property, then we check to make sure that it is going to be utilized as such, that they're not going to put retail or commercial, and that the traffic is going to be in line with what the zoning is. Similar goes to if it's retail, commercial, or as I said, residential. So in essence is if somebody has a zone, piece of parcel that is made for residential, we check for that and or if it's zoned for multiple single family residential, we confirm that that is in line with our zoning and with our traffic model, as Bill mentioned earlier. We have a model that has every parcel in El Dorado County entered into it. And it has already dictated what the traffic volume is going to be for those parcels. And so then when a project comes in, if it conforms to that model, to that zone, we make sure that they are abiding by Caltrans standards, by state standards, CEQA, NEPA, whatever environmental standards. And then we proceed to move forward through either planning commission and or to the board of supervisors to confirm that they are abiding by that. Now, if they are wanting to have something that is a higher use or a higher number of volume of trips that we call for traffic modeling purposes, meaning number of volume of traffic, then it goes more into a discretionary, meaning the county has discretion in what that project can do. Similar, for example, Project Frontier. Although fit the zone, it still had a much higher usage of traffic. And so then they were going through a discretionary process because it wasn't meeting our model, and it was exceeding it, as a matter of fact. And so then, if that project was to have gone forward, they would have had many hurdles, in particularly with the Department of Transportation, because right from the get-go, we warned them that their traffic models weren't in line with ours. Nonetheless, the community came out and wanted to make sure that that was the case. And I think I was actually here stating that if the numbers don't fit, I'm not going to quit, or vice versa. But I was not going to allow a project to move forward, even though it was zoned for it, if it wasn't going to meet our standards, our model, our calculations, our metrics for that project. Now, if a project wants to change its zoning, meaning, let's say it's commercial, but they want to do residential, or it's residential, but they instead want to do commercial. Now, that's an amendment and or a variance, and so then they have to go through a separate process, and that 100% is discretionary, meaning we now we can start imposing much greater implications to the project to make sure that they abide by our standards, and so does the planning department. So there's a ministerial portion of it. So, for example, ministerial would be, for example, if somebody bought a single family parcel and they were going to build a single family home on it, that would be ministerial, meaning they'd go very simple process of checking the boxes. Yes, you are going to build a home. It's not going to be a four-story house. It meets all our parameters. It's if it goes beyond those parameters that then transportation and planning gets more involved. I think where we can do a lot better, and I'm talking about the Department of Transportation, is communicating this with groups such as yourselves. Because when Project Frontier was moving forward, we were holding their feet to the fire. We were keeping them and making sure that they were meeting the standards, the specifications, the metrics. But you guys didn't know that because we hadn't gotten to that point yet where they were either not meeting it or there was going to be complications, and it hadn't gone to Planning Commission and it hadn't gone to the Board of Supervisors. But where I think my department can do better is to present the facts and the metrics and the background, the data as to where my model sits, how this project works within the model, what is it that we are requiring of them, what are going to be the impacts ahead of time so that the public knows that we are looking at that. Because I think so many times the public thinks that, well, they're just, going and checking the boxes and nobody is actually watching them and they're just, it's perfunctory and they're just going to move forward. But there's so many checks and balances that are occurring. And I think that's where I can do a better job with my department and with giving your group, such as yourselves, information. So as John Balzer said earlier, we have a website. If you go to El Dorado County's website, you go to government, you go to transportation, and you go to transportation planning. There's a slew of documentation there that spells out what level of services, meaning delays, how we measure traffic. And that's a whole nother aspect that I if you guys like, I could get into it, but I'll leave that up to you because the state of California does not allow us to have a variance because we're semi-rural. They put us in the same ballpark as City of Sacramento, City of Los Angeles, City of San Francisco. We're all in the same boat when it comes to the metrics of level of service and delays and traffic congestion. So it then makes it worse for us, because what we see as a level of service F is not a level of service F for, like, let's say, the city of Sacramento. And so then we are going through this process, and we are making sure that we are giving applicants input as to what would be a better design, such as what we did here today with our CIP projects. I feel it would be beneficial, because then I heard things from residents that I wasn't thinking was going to be an issue, but some of you said, hey, are you looking into this? Are you looking into that? And it's beneficial for us. It would be beneficial for projects to come to, oh, and they do it with us, and we give them what we think you guys want, but there were issues here that I heard today that I wasn't aware about my CIP projects that you guys are concerned about. So to me, that's a benefit. So it benefits me to hear that. I think some of these developments would benefit from hearing from you guys. Whether they accommodate or not, that's a different story. And that's another aspect of it, because the metrics that we use to measure what we can legally enforce on a project is complicated. So that is CEQA and NEPA, and that is predicated on the state of California. And so it does tie my hands a little bit, especially if it's a ministerial project, similar to what I said, a single family home, and they build a single family home. It's when they go discretionary, now I have more leeway, and I could put my thumb on them in terms of telling them what they need to do. But there are a lot of other aspects that sometimes us county engineers don't know at all, and neither do our county planners. And so then hearing from yourselves, hearing from groups like yourselves, and then doing that back and forth collaboration can probably get project applicants to think out of the box, because ultimately they would appreciate your support when they go before the planning commission, when they go before the board of supervisors. And so then if they can make minor modifications, such as either what John Razzler said earlier about bicycles, bicycle facilities, pedestrian facilities, studies, different aspects, well, then it might improve a project. Now, whether I can legally force them to do it or not is a different question. But it's also a good opportunity for me to inform the public that, well, I think this is good to ask of the project, but I can't legally force them to do it. But hey, maybe we can encourage them. Maybe the county can, pitch in some money, and maybe we can get them to make minor modifications that might benefit everybody. So that's, I think, where Bill and I both heavily agreed on, that doing that kind of communication, that kind of back and forth is going to be very beneficial for myself when we meet with these applicants, because then I know better what you guys are looking for, thinking about. And then also it's good for them to hear from you guys as well. And then also it's good for you guys to hear what we can and can't impose on a project, and then see if we can maybe meet somewhere in the middle to move forward. And ultimately, that's, I think, the goal here is to get communication, transparency about what we can, what we can't do with a certain project, and how we can get that information to you guys, get your information over to the applicants, so that in the end, we can allow them to develop, because they have the right, but a better project. Maybe not perfect, never is, but something that might benefit, have something in for everybody. So that's kind of like a very 35,000 feet in the air overview of what the Department of Transportation does. Now, planning does a whole different process and policies that they do in terms of reviewing projects. For example, there's the environmental impact report. If a project is not conforming with what it is zoned for, they have to do an environmental impact report that is managed by the planning department. We have some say in that because traffic is part of it. And noise is included in that, sound walls, what the impacts are, because you are going outside of the box of what you are allowed to design or zone for in this area. There's a lot of different aspects to the entitlement process for somebody to develop a project. And it took me 25 years of doing this to actually get to where I'm at and know it fairly well. So I definitely don't expect any of you to be astute masters of what we have, what we cannot do, what we are able to do. So I think it would be beneficial for me, and I think your group, to have more collaboration, either through a spokesman or through maybe regular meetings. And I think that's something that we're gonna start working on as a group, so that I can get you guys information, you guys can get me information, and then when we have to raise up to the top, have a meeting like this, so we can get information together and collaboratively, and so that we can get basically more awareness of where we're at and where we're going. So that's pretty much about it, John.
Cool. A follow-up on anything there?
So, yes. And I'm happy to be that interface and happy to be that conduit.
Sure.
And, anywhere, anytime.
Okay, wonderful.
And I know that last year we had started that way because I think you came in January, February. It's very early in the year. We had a good discussion. And then I think that big project in the business park sort of grabbed everyone's attention for about
Yeah, you're right.
for about 3
You're right,
months.
it did, yeah.
So we had talked about doing like maybe 2 big meetings during the year.
Yeah.
And we got our first one in, but fell apart on the second one. So.
I think he has a question.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
Sure.
I heard the comments made about the model and the use of the model pertaining to truck traffic hitting the Highway 50 interchange.
Yes.
And I want to take it back to somewhat of that, but bring it up a level.
Okay.
We've got a huge lot split going that's pending in the business park.
Okay.
With a tremendous amount of truck traffic. We've got the first portion of that already approved and proceeding on a ministerial permit that is going to hit an intersection that currently is jammed during rush hours at Latrobe and Golden Foothills Parkway. So my question is, you talk about these models, and yet I clearly hear that the models don't envision the e-commerce explosion that has occurred in this area and is going to continue to occur. So how is the transportation department dealing with that kind of explosive growth that's not currently in the model? And we have a view that these people are entitled to do the development in spite of the infrastructure not being ready for it.
That is a spectacular question, and Bill kind of hit me up with that one when we had our meeting. And so then what we do is we have an update, a major update of that model every 5 years. We make modifications once a year, and that's primarily for inflationary purposes. But every 5 years, we take the model and we throw everything back in it as to what it is existing traffic and what we either are foreseeing projects that are coming in, so similar to the ones that Bill had up on the screen. And then we say, okay, this is now what is actually occurring. So what was that intersection, the one off of Latrobe, the one? Robert Matthews. So that one was not on our radar screen prior to 2019. After 2019, that one popped into our radar. And so then now we have included that as one of our CIP projects that we have to make improvements on. So that's where our model, because as much as engineers like to think that they're perfect, they're not, and their models aren't either. And when they look into a crystal ball, it's still as fuzzy as anybody else looking into a crystal ball. And so then that's why every 5 years, we have to redo it to say, okay, is it really what we looked at 5 years ago and the 5 years before and the 5 years before? Is it really coming to fruition? No, it's not. Okay, then what do we have to do to make the improvements and the modifications so that we then actually mitigate what is either occurring now and or will get worsened with any future project. So now that project is in our CIP and is going to get improved. Now, I don't know where I am in terms of the improvement timeline for it, but I can tell you it's in our CIP now.
Follow-up question to that.
Sure.
We see that at Robert Matthews at Golden Foothill.
Yes.
So that hit your radar.
Yeah.
Have you followed down Robert Matthews to Investment Drive, which is gridlocked with people now coming from the school, the same way that the other end is?
Okay.
And there's a 400-home development going in right next to it.
So I can tell you that we are redoing our update right now as we speak. We just started in December. And I encourage you all, Supervisor Heidel will probably be letting you know when we will be at the board to discuss what the model is telling us when we're going to be discussing it at the board. You're all more than welcome to come. We talk about the traffic, the volumes, the truck traffic, and I can tell you, yes, because Robert Matthews got on our radar, now that entire area now is heavily on our radar. And actually, ever since Frontier, well, actually, ever since 2019, the entire area is on our radar because we do realize that is our fastest growing traffic volume area in the entire county. So that one is going to be heavily scrutinized, not only by us, but I'm sure by all of you, in making sure that we are sticking to what our standards are. So yes, most definitely.
But we previously have talked much about Carson Crossing and traffic patterns and so on. But a key question that's come up, that's identified as a residential connector. Residential connectors, I assume, have a different construction criteria versus a residential or, a industrial connector, which is built for heavier truck traffic. Is that true? Is that an issue that you look at when you're assessing some of these projects? Because we can readily foresee that this 8-bay distribution center at the corner of Carson Crossing and Golden Foothills is going to avoid that Robert Matthews interchange in the Golden Foothills at Latrobe and come right around on Carson Crossing, which was built as a residential connector. So are we looking at potential road failures in the future or a much more impacted roadway that's going to affect your CIP in the future?
That is always a concern for us. We always want to try and avoid having any heavy vehicular volume corridor in an area where we have more residential. Now, I can tell you that a residential collector still has a high threshold for the amount of volume that it can take. I don't know what they are right now off the top of my head, but that's a very good question, and I'm going to make a note of it right now that I should probably take a look at that because yes, if any vehicular traffic is going to be going that route, and with any new project, we do what is called a distribution, trip distribution. We say, okay, if this is what this project is used for, let's say retail or commercial, we say this is the direction that they all should be going. And so it dependent on the usage and where the traffic is coming and going, that is dependent on whether that road is going to be impacted greatly or not. So I can definitely tell you that I'm going to look at it when I get back into the office and ask my engineers to make sure we look into it and see what the threshold is for that location.
That's good. I want to say I appreciate it, and this is the kind of exchange and collaboration that I hope we can work with, both with your department and in the future with planning a bit more, so that we as a community get more aware and you get more aware of our concerns.
Exactly. Agreed.
And so then I had the roads in the business park are county owned, county maintained. Remember, I'm drawing a blank.
Some are, some aren't.
Okay. And then obviously Carson is, it just got
Carson
transferred.
is, yes.
Got transferred. Just got
Yes.
transferred, okay. So to follow up on George's question, would there be, if it was something that everyone, in terms of the analysis, believes that, hey, well, that might be a significant impact, is there a mechanism to limit commercial traffic on Carson? It's a state thing, right?
Well, okay, so that's where I was talking about level of services and the highway design manual, because what is a level of service would be to us is not what the state of California feels is a level of service. I can tell you when I moved here 12 years ago from Southern California, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, these roads are amazing. This traffic is so awesome. I love it here. This is so great. And now I'm like, I waited a light for more than 30 seconds. I'm like, oh my God, this traffic is terrible. Somebody should fix this. Oh yeah, that's me. But it just goes to show, I mean, we live a different lifestyle than that of, the state of California. And so then what is a level of service F to us for those that live in the cities is, wow, this is great. So, and that's unfortunate, but it's not to say that we as a county can't work with a developer to say, okay, yeah, we know that this is your threshold, but really, come on, really? Are you really going to go up to right here? Come on, how about you work with us and you give us a better level of service? That's going to be better for you, better for us, better for your future customers. And so then that's where I think we can work together so that, yeah, we make sure that they don't have to make, yeah, they might not be a level service F, but I don't want them to be a level service D- either. So that's where I think we should work together.
And as we discussed, having that conversation early in the process.
Early in the process is really critical, yeah.
Okay, any more questions up here? Okay, we'll go up there with your microphone.
Yep. See if I can get this to work. Can you hear me? Okay. I think we can all agree that your forecasting models, when it came to completing Saratoga, were a little short of the mark. It's pretty bad. And my question is, we are all aware that Serrano Associates LLC is pushing forward full speed ahead to get their Central El Dorado Hills specific plan approved, which will put 1,000 housing units in that very area. That's going to be 2,000 more cars on the road than there are now or more. What is the transportation department doing about that whole situation? Have you notified the necessary authorities that this is a catastrophe traffic-wise?
So to answer your first either question or comment, the intersection itself is actually not failing now. I know. I wish that was the case, but the intersection is actually operating at a level service D right now. I know. I'm telling you, I don't like it because I go to soccer, and that's how I go to soccer, and I get mad every time I get behind it.
You're the only one in the county that thinks that.
But the left turn, that movement is failing. That is failing. And what I mean by failing, the numbers, the 2 + 2, the equations that say this is what fails. But it rose to our radar as of 2019, and so now it's in our CIP. So we are going to address that. Now, in terms of Central, you said? It was Central, right? So they are asking for something that is not per our zoning. So it's a discretionary project. So if they are going to get a project that is going to add that much traffic into our system, it needs to pass all our benchmarks. And they haven't yet. Every time they meet up with us, we've told them, well, you're not there yet. No, you're not there yet. And so then that's why, I mean, as you know, they haven't gone back to the Planning Commission, although I hear that they're considering it, but they haven't gone back to Planning Commission yet, and they
So
haven't
they're
gone
going
back to the Board.
directly to the Board of Supervisors, and that's my concern.
And so then, but once again, they can't do that until they've checked all the boxes with either Department of Transportation or with the Planning Department to say that, yes, that it's met all our criteria. They haven't done that yet.
Linda, you have your microphone?
We can only hope.
I have a microphone. My name is Linda Campbell. So actually, I was going on to the government website, and I'm looking at your travel demand model page.
Yes.
And it actually says updated in 2014, which is almost 10 years ago. And I was looking at all of the related documents, so the supporting documents, and they're all related to that timeline too. So just sometimes it's difficult for material to be updated and current, but definitely if we're going to be looking for information, we wouldn't find anything from within the last 5 years that was mentioned.
I am now texting my deputy director of development and going to give him a piece of my mind, because if you're telling me it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I was making notes. Are there any other questions in the room? You have your microphone handy? Good deal.
I didn't have any questions until the last comment. Thank you. I thought I was waiting for that on the agenda item. I'm confused. The Central El Dorado Hills Specific Plan project is scheduled to go to the Board of Supervisors January 29th, a special meeting. They requested a special meeting, January 29th.
So
I don't understand when you're saying they haven't met the criteria. We've been noticed from the planning department.
So they do have, and Supervisor Heidel's addressed that at several meetings that, you know, like they did with the Planning Commission, they did several meetings in Placerville, and they did one big meeting here. And I believe with several supervisors, their commitment was they wanted to have a meeting when it went to the board, 2 meetings, at least one here, so we could all address project like we did with 500 people in a big room. And Supervisor Heidel had said that they had identified Holy Trinity, potentially the end of January, the 29th. We'll talk about it at the end, after we're done with the transportation.
But Raphael seems very puzzled, like he's wondering how it's going to the board.
So it is, they've issued a third partially recirculated draft EIR because of the change in CEQA and the greenhouse gas metrics that they're looking at. They're pursuing a parallel path right now because if they don't sell the property to the CSD, then they want to be able to proceed with their project.
I know, but my question is, why are they even able to schedule a Board of Supervisors meeting, a special meeting, if you're saying they haven't even met your transportation?
So they had a project that had circulation back, say, 2 years ago. And so then if that's what they're bringing forward, so that I haven't heard of that. So I'm not aware of that. And that did have modifications and improvements that I had requested if a project was going to move forward. That was to make improvements on El Dorado Hills Boulevard, Silva Valley,
kind of.
I mean, it was, they had major improvements that they had to do on, so I'm not sure if that's the project that they're bringing back. I don't know.
It's the same project that's been brought back.
Well, and if that's the case, then you'd have to ask them. I do not know that. I was not made aware that they were coming back to the Board of Supervisors.
The planning department notice, they give the notice, they mail it to all of us, and they've scheduled it on the 29th of a special meeting, not even a board meeting. That I appreciate that that they're, talking about something here, but if the Board of Supervisors are gonna be making a decision, they're pushing CSD, if it falls through, which it could, then what are we approving a project?
But, okay, so are you, and I'd rather not speak without having any information. All I can tell you is I am not aware of Central putting in an application or saying, hey, DOT, we're coming in with this project, either the old one or the new one or the revised.
Modified for, study in the air.
So, but I can tell you that if I do hear of that, yeah, you guys are the first ones that should probably hear about it, and we should all have a talk about it, by all means. And I think that's where John was trying to get a hold of me last January, and now I think Bill is going to be a good opportunity, because that did get vetted out, and there was a lot of improvements that the Department of Transportation forced them to make in terms of the impacts that was going to happen to the community. But you guys didn't know about it, and I will apologize, because not that I was working in a bubble or siloed, but I was getting information from little sources that I had from the community that I felt was conveyed in their project. I think this is a much better avenue, this collaboration, where we're talking ahead of time, and like Bill said early on, so that we are in the know, you guys are in the know, as opposed to just us, so that we're all, and we know what's coming forward. Because if there is something coming forward in January, I don't know about it.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna mention at the end, but yeah, the way, and I think we've talked about it in the past too, is that, they obviously went to the planning commission made their recommendation.
Yeah.
The planning commission's recommendation is a recommendation only, it's advisory.
Right.
And so the board, so they have the right, the process to request that the board of supervisors review the project in whatever form they're presenting it, and we don't know yet.
See, that's the part I don't know yet. I don't know what that form looks like.
We don't know on the 29th if the Board of Supervisors is gonna vote yes or no on it?
It's not gonna be, that's not the
mean, I have
legislative,
to tell
they're not
you.
gonna take a legislative action there. It's, yeah, it's.
Oh, they're not, it's no action?
No, there's the first, it's two meetings. The first one is to review and make the presentation for the board to consider and hear, and then the final meeting would probably be in Placerville, and they'd make their.
In the future? They're not,
Whether it's the next week or if it's 2 months, 3 months, we don't.
okay, because the way the notice was sent out, it's very official. It's just like any other notice that comes from the planning commission that you.
From the planning department, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the planning department.
There's a
sorry,
revised,
it's late.
Yeah,
It's a revised, yeah.
environmental impact study.
Right.
Has to be a list.
yeah, on greenhouse gases and air quality only. John, yeah, I really appreciate what you folks do. You do an excellent job. I didn't read every word, but I reviewed the 68-page report
Sorry about that.
that you guys submitted, and I mean, I think it was really a nice piece of work. My question is, did anybody in the county respond to any item on that report?
Well, inasmuch, well, I know the consultants didn't agree with it, the planning commission. The planning commission, their findings were very similar to what we had offered in terms of that we thought it wasn't consistent with the general plan, that the environmental analysis was inadequate. Yeah, and we had a lot of other things we identified, but that's the determination that the planning commission made, and they voted to deny the EIR approval 4-1, and they said that it wasn't consistent with the general plan, voted 5-0 on that. So I know they read it because I talked to 4 of 5 planning commissioners, and when Commissioner Vania was still hearing in El Dorado Hills, he was very engaged with us about, hey, when are you getting it to us? Can I get it? Can I read it? So I know they looked at it. I know the planning department looked at it. Well, and thank you for that. But again, advisory is in the middle of our name. So we have no land use authority, right? We're not appointed by the Board of Supervisors to review. They entertain what we submit, whether, and then they make their own determinations, planning commission and the board. So, and to be generous, I think that, but I know a lot of people look at it. So, and then again, the meeting that's in January, if it happens, that it's supposed to be, it's not, and no action will be taken, it'll be a review.
Okay, because people are asking me, I'm the representative for this project. You know,
Yeah.
when they see that notice, I mean.
Yes, I think, you know, same thing, you know, people, I get those emails, texts, Facebook messages, next door messages, and I want to say, the last time we talked about this, I had like 300 in a day. So people are interested, people are, and that's important. The important part is that you submit your comments and that you make your concerns known, and I know you guys do. So, but yeah, in terms of what they're going to present, we still don't know. Are there changes? Presumably there might be. To overcome the objections that the planning commission had, because then the board would have to take consideration of the planning commission advice in terms of their findings, and then make their own assessment based off of maybe some major, minor, I don't know. So I try to address that. I'm of no use to you, I'm sorry. and I've heard that
Huge
before.
use.
So.
No, yes, you are. Just the opposite.
So, but yeah, so are there any more questions for Raphael before, we're going to move on to the environmental? We have hands up, sorry, I'm ignoring people.
It has to do with central postponement.
Yeah, Central will take at the end.
I just have one question.
Yeah, go
I
ahead,
don't know
Pamela.
if you've recognized my hand.
Yes, I see it
Thank
right now.
you. I apologize for barging in, but I have read the report as well. And I just wanted to know if I could put on record, what are we doing with the historical artifacts in these places where we've proposed to build these facilities? I know that even where Costco is being proposed, there is a historical reference out there, and I think it's worth considering and deciding what to do with it. The other part I would like to contribute is we continue to forget about people that are in our community that can only walk or bike ride to major facilities. And whether it be in the business park or directly off of the freeway, we have apartments that are normal income, but we also have low income communities that are near town center, near the business park, and near the proposed Costco, where people might not be able to travel with vehicles, but we haven't figured out how to get people safely from one end of the town to the other so that they could contribute to the community. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't expect an answer today, but I do expect an answer at some point.
Thank you, Pamela. And I know that if you look at the County Transportation Commission, which is not a county agency, but a commission that helps with transportation and circulation planning, they have many projects that are identified for pedestrian and bicycle elements of transportation. The challenge is always is dollars. And so the Transportation Commission goes in search of, and that's a constant thing that they're looking at in terms of how they can get projects funded, whether it's a lot of grant funding or other elements like that. But they do have long-term plans. It's just a matter of how do we fund it? You know, and in truth, a lot of times it's development projects that provide some funding, either through mitigation fees or through other mechanisms to get these things done. So, yeah, I just would recommend people keep their eye on it.
And that's what I would hope. Like if somebody big like Costco that has like endless amount of dollars and they want to come into a community, they should spend endless amount of dollars to make a walkable, bikeable, and shoppable community wherever it is that they decide to land. Thank you.
I think, let's see, I see one I don't see in that list. Let me look over here real quick. Don't see. You know what? Bina has her hand up, but I cannot get to it. I don't see it in my list. There it is. Bina, if you want to go ahead.
Okay, hi, this is Bina. I just wanted to say that the presentation that Bill gave with the bird's eye view of the transportation sector of El Dorado Hills, I did a presentation almost like that for land use. So if you guys want to use what I've already done, if you can get in touch with me and tell me who to talk to with the APAC rep for land use, I'm happy to give it to them.
We appreciate anything that you have to contribute. And I know that I can contact you. So
Sure.
It might not be tonight, but
No, it's okay. Anytime.
all right. Thank you, Bina.
You're
All
welcome.
right.
Take care.
We wrap this up. We have a transportation. I'm sorry, finish with transportation. Bill, do you have anything else? No, thank you. The standing committees have done a lot of work, like over the course of a year, in looking at all these things and trying to identify how we could develop a process for applying some thoughtful consideration to the project. And so, George, you have the floor now for the. Let me see, make sure I'm gonna jump this ahead. Oh, I was going to say, oh, wait, when we talk about transportation, if you've ever looked at this video from 1963, I think, that's the original off-ramp for Highway 50. It's just a turn. And it goes through basically Taco Bell and comes back. The Boulevard Dead ended right there. And it's a video. It's for the Center for Sacramento History. And that's the actual road. And there's the 76 station there on the left. And then again, it wasn't then, that's right. And then there's Park Village looking from the north backwards. So we were talking about, when we talk about how we plan things, this is how we plan things back then. And maybe, we weren't as thoughtful or considerate.
And this is why you do an update every 5 years.
Yes, so anyways, so we're moving ahead. So George, thank you. You're on, right?
So I'm George Steed. I'm chairing the Standing Committee on Environmental. And go ahead, hit the next. Here we are. This is our committee members and kind of our committee goals. We're looking at trying to develop better processes with EDC departments. That's a common thread. None of us are that experienced with environmental, with probably one exception on our committee. Melinda is very well read and very knowledgeable.
And a professional.
Yes, and a professional. But the key thing is to build more awareness on both sides here of environmental processes. Our side from the community and bring that into our concerns, our issues, our questions back to the county and particularly to the planning department. And one of the key things there is that we don't want to be adversarial. I know that we come across that way oftentimes out of frustration, probably more than anything else. We want to work collaboratively and constructively in building understanding and being able to communicate between us and the community and us and the El Dorado County departments so that we're working together to build a better community. That's the bottom line. So let's, go ahead, move on. Current activities, committee put together a comment letter for from APAC regarding the cell tower proposal. We're looking at the Central El Dorado Hills specific plan, again, the revised DEIR, which addressed primarily, in fact, exclusively, greenhouse gas. And so comments are limited to that. We've submitted the 68 pages a year ago now on the other issues. We'll probably touch a bit on some of those in comments, but that's an aside. But a bigger question that we've got is El Dorado Hills Business Park, because we are aware of development that's continuing there. And one of the things that we as a community don't understand is a lot of the details that were in the formation documents and early EIRs. And unfortunately, those predate digitization of county records. So it's a matter of pulling back and getting that information so that we educate ourselves on one side, but then we also look at the new information that we have, and that's substantial. We've looked at a couple of biological studies. We've had the creation of a whole new preserve area down there that stands to be impacted by the business park. And so, again, we're struggling to understand what's there, what has changed, and what needs to be done. Go ahead, Ron. So as to the partial revision of the DEIR, to say the least, committee members are as frustrated as everybody else with this process. None of the previous findings have been addressed by the applicant. We've seen no comments or no attempts to modify any of the issues that were brought up in any of their plans. The most likely scenario now with the CSD board approving the purchase isn't even addressed in this DEIR. And yet the county is continuing to use sources, staff sources, in evaluating all this. And it's frustrating, and it's a bit ridiculous that we bend over backwards on a developer. I understand the aspect of entitlement and a purchase that a developer's made on property, but we've got other citizens that are getting pushed back because county planning can't process stuff rapidly because their resources are being spent on this project over and over again. So just to touch base in what we're looking at on the DEIR, the notice of project information stated obstructs implementation of applicable air quality plan, exposes sensitive receptors to substantial toxic air contaminants, causes substantial adverse change in the significance of an archaeological resource, generates significant greenhouse gas, and conflicts with applicable plan, policy, or regulation, and exposes people or generates noise in excess of general plan standards. Now that comes from the county's off the top look at this document. And at that point, I gotta ask, if this is a discretionary program, why is it still continuing to go on year after year? It's gotta have something that puts a stop to it. Nonetheless, I will say that our committee will review and will report at the January meeting on the latest DEIR and make our comments known. So as to the business park, we're going to continue to pull out those formation documents, go back to the early EIR studies, hold that up against the new environmental information, because clearly there are some addendums that need to be made to that, because we have identified special status wildlife species of special concern, birds of prey, migratory birds that have not been identified previously in any updated addendum to the business park applications. So we're going to focus on current projects, the Gateway El Dorado, which is the lot split, wholesale distribution center, and the retail commercial, and also the Latrobe self-storage with its runoff potential into Carson Creek. So that's kind of what we're looking to go forward with. Our concerns there are that, go ahead, next slide, is researching and learning. None of us are experts in land use and environmental issues. We're all laymen. So we're going to learn right along with trying to study this and identify our concerns. We want to communicate closely with transportation. It's clear that from research that we did on Project Frontier that diesel particulate matter is a grave concern to nearby residents. And since we've had new developments go in around the business park that have been approved by the county, our own heritage, Blackstone and so on, that are alongside those transportation corridors, those impacts have to be looked at in light of the new environmental and health impacts. I don't believe those impacts were known back in the early 80s when the EIRs were done for the business park. And that's what we're going to peel back and take a look at and see what's there and what needs to be updated. So that's
Okay. And so, I'll start right now. It's like, when we talk about transportation, that has everybody's focus all the time, right? We all have to get someplace. The environmental experts is identified. None of us are experts. Well, most of us aren't experts, sorry. There's some esoteric aspects of this, right, that it's hard to get your head around. So the fact that you guys are working on this, that we have a very large group that are doing so, I continue to be thankful for the amount of effort you guys are putting into it. With that said, I'll open it up. Are there any questions in the room about the transportation of the environmental standing committee? From the first look they've had here. You've answered every question. So I want to say that there is one hand up online here. Jumping between machines. Looks like Pamela, do you have your hand up?
I absolutely do. And I just want to say I back everything that's just been said. And I was hoping that there was a thumbs up gesture that I could give, but I do thoroughly appreciate that we're going to take the time to do assessments. I just have been witnessing what's happening literally just west of us in Folsom. And I spent, I want to say, 8 years of my life back before, somewhere between, 88 to 94, where I fought off that build out, and they had a 12-year hiatus before they could do anything. And now I'm looking at the horrific results of them not being opposed. And I really appreciate the fact that our community is willing to spend the time and the money to do these assessments and make sure that we are not going to be overwrought with traffic and pollution. And we're going to control our community for our children and their children who want to continue to live in this community and make it beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. Okay, with that, watch how fast I do this. Okay, let me hide some of this so I can see what I'm reading. We have some minor updates. The Sienna Ridge Quick Car Wash went to the Planning Commission. We had concerns about noise. They provided their noise study information to us. A resident right there who lives very adjacent to this project, he reached out to me. He actually made comments during our last meeting when we discussed this, because, again, we're not experts. We look at the noise study and they say there's less than 1 decibel increase over existing conditions. That's shocking, but, again, engineers and scientists, they say that. So, but we did submit comments to the Planning Commission in support of what the resident provided to us sort of after the fact. And they did approve the project. There would be an additional sound study at the completion of the construction of the project. And there will be ongoing noise monitoring, which was an element that we're always concerned about because many times when you have the monitoring programs, it's based off residents doing monitoring and providing. So then it puts residents in a project in conflict right away, right? I'm watching you. And that's, nobody wants that. So we were glad to see that. So that project was approved. And again, we talked about Central. Don't need to go through the particulars on this. There's the third partially recirculated draft EIR. Comments are due on the comment period ends on January 26th. I know that we have people reading it. I've read through it. And other than the fact that, some standards have changed in CEQA in terms of the greenhouse gas. And as we described in the environmental standing committee report, there are elements in that say, it still exceeds either state standards, county standards, but, with an EIR, you can mitigate or you can say, hey, it's substantial, but can't mitigate, and they can go for it anyways. So what's interesting on this is that, we had talked about the end of January with one hearing in El Dorado Hills, Holy Trinity Church, if that does happen. The other thing about this is that, of course, we talked about community council, I think it was last week. The CSD has reached an agreement to purchase 55 acres of the old executive golf course property. There is some unique aspects of this. It's $10 million for 55 acres. And then the developer, the property owner will also throw in an additional 11 acres, which is right behind us over here on the north side of Wilson at no cost. And so that brings it to 66. So the concept is that, and the CSD is meeting tomorrow night. They're talking about different funding sources and how they're going to pursue this. The board voted to proceed with this purchase. After the sale of the 55 acres is complete, CSD has an 18-month option from the developer to purchase the remaining 43 acres of the old golf course. Right now, they're talking about going just past the old clubhouse. If you ever played golf out there, and I have, they would buy up just south of the old golf course across Toronto Parkway and all the way up right behind us here in this building. And then the property south of that towards Highway 50 is the 43 acres that they could, they have 18 months to identify a funding source, if it's private, public, combination, to purchase the remaining 43 acres. The thing that the CSD was very, their goal was to keep the zoning intact, the recreational facilities zoning intact for the entirety of the golf course property. And with this sale of just the 55 acres, there's a commitment that the entire golf course property will retain the recreational facilities, high intensive usage zoning, and it'd be codified. I don't know if it'd be a deed restriction or how that would work, but they say that if the CSE is unable to raise the funds to buy the other 43 acres, that they would, whatever development would happen on the 43 acres would be consistent with the existing zoning, which I think the community has asked for 12 years. So tip of the hat to the CSD, that is an enormous amount of money. And a lot of people are questioning the price, but I think this is something that the community has wanted to see an opportunity to at least discuss what could be done. So,
well, it was brought
thank
up.
you.
Yeah, it was brought up.
Oh, you got to be green. There you go. There you go. Look out. There you go.
It was brought up at a meeting I went to recently that it's kind of strange because the whole golf course is one parcel, and it is not what they have to do first. If they're going to split it, is they have to do all the things that everyone else who wants to split their parcels has to do. And it came to mind as I was writing a parcel split, report today about my work is one small part of it, but there's all kinds of other studies. So, and the other thing that we've complained about before is that the golf course is a cultural resource. That's not the one they're talking about. They're talking about something on Pedregal when they say there may be harm to a resource. I suspect even the CSD will harm the resource of the golf course, which has not been recorded and not been evaluated. So there's a bunch of work to do that the timing doesn't work for, with them forcing through this emergency purchase. And so there's a whole lot of questions, more questions in my mind about why this is going this route and this timing. And I think there's some trick in there personally, you know, that we haven't all seen yet, but there's something in there that is going to get botched up. And like I said, they were told, what was it, a year and a half ago, you know, that we felt the cultural resource should be at least studied and evaluated, and it's got famous associations, et cetera. So there's a whole lot about this that I'm not sure. I think it may be a mistake. And so, again, I think there's a lot more to be studied than just letting it go ahead and say, oh, good, we're getting our golf course back. That's not what we're getting.
Yeah, and there's no official project for what the CSD would do. They're going to look at alternatives, obviously, right? But I think their main goal, and that parcel split's confusing to me too, but the main goal obviously was to obtain the property and preserve the zoning. And I do think it's rushed, but I do think that there's external forces like you're suggesting that's, you know, impacted how they're pursuing this purchase. So we'll keep, you know, we'll listen if there's anything new to report. Obviously, we'll share it, and we'll put on the APAC website as well. The other aspect of this is, as Linda just identified, the Pedrical Plan area, which is right across the street. That will likely be proposed for some other project, whether it's multifamily, whether it's the large lots that they had suggested. There's a lot of potential water impacts there. There's cultural resources. There's a lot of things there. So stay tuned on that. So, and since we don't have the information, as we discussed earlier, well, we know you'll know. So did I miss anything on that?
Well, CSD more, the private CSD.
Well,
are we going to know more?
their agenda is to look at the options for financing tomorrow. Whether they make a determination tomorrow, they have to do more study, more analysis, but they have a short window. That is not me doing that. So here, and so there, and that's what's proposed. So that blue area is the 11 acres, and that's across the street here. Obviously, there's some setback and some, I'm drawing a blank, but anyways, north of the red line there is reserved for the applicant to, you know, for setback and for right of way and whatever their, I remember what that was, but and again, and then the brown area all the way on the other side is the 43 acres that there's some potential for something to happen there.
And a roadway connection, obviously, at the.
Yes. And that's, and we won't ask Rob, we won't pose on Raphael anymore. But I will say that roadway, you know, there's, well, yeah, it's almost tomorrow. That roadway is expensive. And when you look at all the, I think there's 4 pieces of Country Club that would extend. Now there's 4 CIP projects for Country Club. And I think it's over $60 million today. And it's on a 20-year horizon, which means it'll probably be $120 million. But yeah, and there's also aspects of on the golf course property and around the bottom of Serrano, where there's wetlands that the Army Corps of Engineers would have to weigh in on. So it's very complicated. So it won't happen tomorrow. We'll see. Oh, you know what? I moved my slide. Sorry. So Costco, we talked about a little bit that there was some misinformation. We talked to the community council about the project being withdrawn. It's not being withdrawn. They had the way they were processing the project is Costco was processing their project. EDH 52 is doing their project, but they're going to combine both of them to do a cumulative environmental impact or their environmental process of review. At this point, what has changed is that EDH 52 General Partners, which is Topos Investments generally, they're going to combine the projects together and process it as one project under their umbrella. And then Costco, if it's approved, Costco will proceed with their purchase and build their project. So that's the only thing that's changed, other than the fact that we were notified a few months ago that they're looking at mixed use on the, I don't want to call it the north side, but they call it the north side. It's the east side. On the east side is Silver Valley. Mixed use, 304 multifamily units, 5 four-story buildings, et cetera, et cetera. It's on the APAC website for you, dying to go look at that. So no real update on that. We're hoping there's another scoping meeting. I would expect there to be another scoping meeting. Stand by. And if you'd like to work on that, we'd like to have you help us. And again, that was it. The original intent was to do the environmental review kind of concurrently. It's still going to be concurrently, but EDH 52 General Partners is going to run it. So, but there's still no project application that we've seen that's different. So, and again, there's the north-south, and that's what they proposed for the mixed use, and that's a little closer look at it. And there's some opportunities, I think, in terms of, we won't get into it tonight, where the country club realignment would come in terms of maybe making some benefit to Oak Meadow Elementary in terms of a better school drop-off pickup area, signalized intersection there. They're still talking about 2 traffic signals. I won't ask you, Raphael. So the other items tonight are officer election results. We did our voting electronically. And tragically, you're stuck with us all again for another year. So congratulations to Bob. Thank you. Bob's first year as an officer, and Bob's done a ton of work with our standing committees and other projects. Tim is on a wonderful trip. He's in South Africa. Brooke wasn't available tonight. And John Reslier, I don't think APAC has never had John Reslier here. So, but thank you, John. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Bob. So that's it for the officer. Okay. And then our meeting schedule next year, our first 3 meetings are weird. Our meeting in January, this room wasn't available on a Wednesday. So we're meeting Tuesday the 9th. So I hope you guys are ready. It's early in the year. Happy New Year. Tuesday the 9th. February 14th, I tried not to do Valentine's Day. Believe me, I heard about it, but that's the day that's available. It's one we didn't want to do. And March 20th is the 3rd Wednesday. The rest of the meetings are scheduled for the 2nd Wednesday in each month. And again, if we don't have projects to review or new information, we won't make you come out and sit for 3+ hours like we did tonight. This was supposed to be short. Sorry, guys. But you want to propose something different? I just need to schedule it.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Well,
The community council at 5 seems.
Yeah.
I don't work, so.
Well, and trust me, gainful employment gets in my way quite a bit. We moved from 7 to 6:30 as sort of a baby step. I think at 5 it's tough to get people here on time from the county.
I couldn't be here.
You do virtual, but not just from the county, but project applicants. But I mean, it's something to consider. If we can have one that we moved early and we can coordinate with the fire department. We can do one in my backyard one. We can do some drilling. So really, our next meeting, of course, is January 9th, 6:30 p.m. back here in this building and also virtual. Thank you, everyone, for being here forever. And thank you, Raphael. And thank you, staff, again. And with that, I believe that we are adjourned.
Thank you. And we online appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you. Stop recording.